also a request for a letter of support for the road, the historical site down on Neilgate to make repairs to that roadway.
Oh, Cushing.
Okay.
Yeah. So I make a motion to accept the agenda with the add-ons we just
Second.
gave to Cal.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. So, we have, Mr. Bjorklund right on at 6:15, he's been watching the clock already. So, we want to do that first, and then, what else do we have for small items?
Signage, minor activities permit, those kind of things.
So we can do them at the end, nobody's here for
Sure.
that. Okay. Steve?
Sure. And this, I guess, is really just kind of a discussion more than anything. Do you want to start, Pat, or would you like me to?
Well, no, you can start, you were around when the project started. I'll just
Okay.
bring this up to,
See it?
this is off at Elm Street.
Steve Bjorklund.
That's the code.
This is Tilden Estates. We had a subdivision that was approved a number of years ago, came through the Conservation Commission, and normally when we do these,
up here.
we show all the proposed house locations and the proposed disturbance around the homes and potential grading around the houses. On the particular plan that's in front of you, a number of those homes had areas that were between the 50 and the 100-foot buffer zone, and we show on the plans basically clouded areas where we're going to do some vegetation planting in the buffer zone areas, and behind the detention basin. There's a string of plants that go behind the detention basin. Original approval, all this showed on the plan, and we received one order of conditions for the entire project. And then as we sell off the individual lots, it reaches a point where, as developers, we'll go back in and do those plantings as each individual house gets constructed and they do the proposed grading. And we're at that point now where the homes are framed up. One of them's being lived in. One of them, I believe it's Lot 9, has some planting behind Lot 9 and some grading. And that home has been framed and will be finished up this spring. The detention basin has been in and working now for a couple of years. So all those buffer zone plantings will go in basically at the same time. And we had a little discussion with Pat regarding, I guess the way it's done in some other towns, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in Hanover, if somebody applies for a subdivision, they grant one order of conditions for the infrastructure of the subdivision, and then they have individual lots file their own notice of intent and/or an RDA, request for determination of applicability, to do work on the individual sites. So in 25 or 30 years that I've been doing this in Scituate, we've done it all as one package, so that when the subdivision comes in, the boards get to see everything that we're proposing with all the grading, all the drainage, and all the plantings. There have been minor modifications when somebody changes a footprint a little bit on a house or something like that, and the board or the agent makes a determination if that's within the scope of the project, or if it's a much larger house, then you come in for a modification or something like that with it. But this particular one was brought on just because of the plantings and the grading in the buffer zone on a couple of those lots. And I talked to Pat about the possibility of changing it if we do subdivisions in the future and what that might entail, so he can kind of bring everybody up to speed on what they do in the town that he came from before he was here. But this particular project was one that just crossed his table because the timing, there was a question as to what's going to happen behind Lot 9, because there is grading that shows on that original plan, and the foundation that was put in by Welby Builders is actually about 4 inches further away from the wetlands than what showed on the original plan. So that's certainly within the scope of what's out there, of not requiring a modification.
So where is Lot 9 on this plan?
It is to the east of the detention basin. And I'm not sure if he has the right plan, I haven't seen what he handed you there. But there are some,
That's Lot 9? Okay.
Yeah, each lot on each side of the detention basin, I think if that's the proper plan, shows a cloud. And in the order of conditions, there's planting schedules for those areas. And we had numbers of plants that came through with the original order of conditions, and the plants that were approved will all be put in.
So what's the problem?
What's the question?
It's not necessarily a problem, it's just more of a clarification with, number one, bringing Pat up to speed with what was originally approved, because when I came in to talk to him, I said, well, these plantings were approved originally, and again, Penny, you were on the board, and Frank was on the board, the other members weren't here when we did it, but that's basically been the protocol in the past.
Okay.
And if Pat wants to talk about changing the protocol, I don't have a problem with that. We'll do it any way the commission wants. With future projects, I just wanted to make sure that Lot 9 was not going to be required to do an additional filing to do the work that was approved on the original order of conditions. And a lot of this comes down to people asking for certificates of compliance, because a lot of the lots are outside the buffer zone. I mean, we've got 15 lots in there, and I want to say maybe 10 or 11 of them aren't even within the buffer zone, but the original order of conditions gets put on the entire property.
Yeah.
And I think Pat may have a good comment that, is there a way that you can limit so that the people that buy those houses don't have to get certificates of compliance because they're outside jurisdiction? But when you issue an order and we come in with a subdivision, it's one piece of property. So it goes against, this one happened to be a 20-acre site that we needed to build the infrastructure on. We didn't have individual lots, so it has to get recorded against the whole project site. And as each individual house sells out, it's become an issue. And I think Pat has an idea of what might be a simpler way to get to these certificates of compliance for the homes that aren't in the jurisdictional areas.
Is there a problem with 9? Why are you concerned about 9?
I'm not concerned about 9.
Right. I invited Steve to come in to talk a little bit about the history of how this all was approved, and he had mentioned that it's done this way as a practice. And I had gone out to the site, saw a house being built, foundations in, it's framed, and I said, boy, this is within, 100 feet of a wetland. I wonder why there's no filing on this. So it turns out there's a filing for the subdivision. And the two ways you can do this, you can file for the subdivision, get all your stormwater structure, your roads, and plantings in, and then each house that's going to be within the 100-foot jurisdiction files. Because in this case, the foundation is 4 inches different, but somebody else may buy the lot and say, gee, I want to put a pool in here, driveway here, I want to shift the house. And we don't have as much control over monitoring what they're doing on their sites. But if they file a notice of intent with us for their own individual project, then it's separate from everyone else, and we deal with them, we address it that way.
Okay, didn't we do that with 214?
We did. There's an order of conditions for the whole subdivision, then there are 3 or 4 lots that when they come back, they're going to be filing with us.
They will have to file
Right.
before they put
Right.
a hole in the ground for the foundation, right?
Which one,
No,
Carol?
we've
Arrowwood.
Arrowwood.
Yeah, we've done them all the same. I mean,
Yeah.
if you, and he's right, if you come back later on with a totally different house plan and they come in with a modification, that's something that's always come in front of the commission. If it's minor.
We hope.
It was always approved either by Vinnie or whoever the agent was, that they would say this is within the scope. And this happens pretty much for all developers. If you're doing a subdivision, you try to show a footprint of a size house that you think is going to go in. And when we designed the drainage system, actually on this particular site, when we designed the drainage, and I don't like to misspeak, but I believe that we put about a 50% increase in impervious area into the drainage calculations, so that when we built that detention basin that's there, it'll handle 50% more than what's required of all the footprints that we show. So if everybody in there wanted a swimming pool and a tennis court, that impervious area could still be handled with the drainage system that we had. And that's all in the drainage report. And we just, you can see how big the basin is if you go out there. It's probably one of the biggest basins in town. And it's huge. I mean, it's almost 2 acres. But it was done specifically so that if there are changes, the people in there won't have an issue. I mean, they can come in and if, certainly if they contact me, if anybody is watching and they want to do a pool, we can bring in the whole drainage report and show how they can increase the impervious area. And I can come in and assure you guys that this system is still going to work fine, even with an increased area. But Pat's comment is more towards what shows in the buffer on the original plan is what should be built. If somebody wants to change what's in that buffer, it could be done with an RDA. And that still is what I would expect somebody to do if Lot 9 somehow wanted a swimming pool. I would assume they'd go for a building permit. Pat would get to review that, and he would take that and look at the original plan and say, well, that doesn't show a pool. You have to come in for an RDA if you want to do a pool. If he finds out on the as-built that the foundation is 4 inches away from where it's supposed to be, that's insignificant and minor, and Pat would probably not even bring it up and say, we're 4 inches further away. So that's the way that, again, we've done them for 25 or 30 years that I've been doing it. And again, we're open to anything Pat would like to do.
Well, one of the issues too is the contours and the amount of fill and the grading, the tree cutting and things like that. If somebody isn't aware that there's a notice of intent required for something like that, and they see an order of conditions for a whole subdivision, they say, gee, as long as my footprint is here, I'm in pretty good shape. But, I think we want to have the discussion with the individual homeowner about what's allowed out there. I mean, I appreciate the fact that it's kept 50 feet away in this case, so it would be an RDA and it's not in the inner buffer. So, I mean, that part of it is good, but, there's a real tough slope on this particular site. There's more fill than you would expect if you looked at the original plan, so. There is, the hay bales are in place, the silt sock, and it's been taken care of, but for this one, I'm fine with having it go ahead, but I don't know if this is the way we want to go in the future.
So can I, well, go ahead.
No, that's
But I don't want to
okay.
get too
You
far
make your
afield.
comment.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So, I know that having one condition for the whole project is a problem for the attorneys when it comes to title, and we've had those problems with like Foxvine and some others where they really got messed up.
Yeah.
And then people are trying to pass papers and things didn't get cleared.
Yep.
So I think having individual notices or RDAs for the lots is probably, has merit, as well as you're saying there'll be a pre-construction for each site, so the agent or someone will have a chance to meet with the contractor that's developing that particular site, make sure their hay bales, if they're not already in place with the subdivision. But they sort of overlap a little bit. I mean, the subdivision typically has issues of its own, and building the road, building the detention, building some of those things, you got notice that you've got to comply with, maybe, if there's a wetlands there.
Yep.
So then, one of the things we do get to hold a little bit is occupancy permits are like the big carrot in trying to make sure everybody complies.
Yeah.
So what would the subdivision have there? Would they have a bond, or would they have cash, or how would the subdivision, how would we be able to guarantee that the subdivision gets completed properly? I mean, the other night, they approved, finally, I think Walnut Tree Hill. I'm not even sure that it's really done, but somehow
Yeah,
it's.
and you get into a situation, obviously, we're, as developers, I'm not going anywhere. Scituate couldn't get rid of me if they wanted to. I'm here for life. So,
Well, but-
so we, as developers, we actually take care of the whole subdivision pretty much until the last home is occupied.
Well, that might be your,
No,
Way to do
and that's
it.
where I'm going, but you've got situations like Walnut Tree Hill where the developer went bankrupt.
Right.
And now the town is trying to chase the bond. It's actually a planning board bond that's there. Certainly Conservation has in the past asked developers if they would put money in escrow for plantings and things like that. And if and when we are asked to do that during the approval process, if the commission said you got $8,000 worth of plants to go in, we want to hold, $8,000, we've done it. We've done that in the past, and, we would probably do that in the future, and I think that's a reasonable thing to ensure that the plantings, as far as the subdivision itself, is taken care of. The problem comes in, and Pat may have the answer, if we get an order of conditions for the subdivision, what do you record it against? because even if you record it against the parcel of land that's the subdivision, you still have to sell out the individual lots, even if they're not subject to it. And otherwise, you just have the basin lot, and you don't want to go take it just against the basin lot, because there's not much security in that. So you're still going to have that certificate of compliance be an issue, I think, no matter how you do it. And, again, I certainly work with the commission to in the future come up with something, better. And Pat, the first time I've heard of this was in just chatting with Pat. So, I'll continue that for future subdivisions, but I think he just wanted me to come in to kind of make everyone aware of the situation we have, which is not bad, because everything else out there is fine. It's just, this was more for clarity's sake than anything, and letting the new commission members know how that was approved out there. And our general scheme as far as drainage is concerned, when you get into the grading, is that most of the front yards from the center of the house pitch towards the street if we can, so it's picked up by the street drainage and goes directly into the detention basin. And from the center of the house to the back of the lots, generally the drainage goes towards the back of the lots, which is where it flowed before. And that's all calculated in the drainage study that we did. And you can see each individual site has pre and post calculations for how much water is ultimately making it there. So where the whole site might have graded back, we grade some towards the front to pick it up and hold it in the detention basin. And the whole thing balances out in the end. Some sites are actually a little higher than what might show on the plan, but the drainage scheme is the same. In other words, the water that's hitting is still going in the same direction as where the drainage plan shows.
You know what, Steve, I think we get
Sure.
20 and we got a few here and
Yeah, that's
to
fine.
hit. But I think we'll certainly talk about it. There may be a better way to not have these problems where Carol's haunted by these CFCs, which I think is a good idea.
Absolutely.
I just want to be sure that we are able to get everything that we want, not only on the individual lots, but for the subdivision.
Yeah.
And how do we make sure that that is secure? I think that's a fair.
Yeah,
But this one is already,
it's done.
this already has the order of conditions.
On
Did
the whole-
stormwater
Whole site,
by us too?
Yeah,
Yeah.
stormwater, yeah, everything is, the only thing left on this is just to do those plantings in the buffer and behind the detention basin, and all those will be complete this spring, and then we have to put a top coat on the road when the last house gets built. So all that, I'm expecting a complete closure of this subdivision before this year is out, and we'll put the road up for public acceptance, with the selectmen, and go through that process. But the main order of conditions should be closed out on this property, within the next few months.
the other thing that could work hopefully for the commission, is with an individual order on each lot. In the future, if there's work, an individual owner comes in, there's a file for that lot already there, so that those orders right now, they'd be with the subdivision. All right.
Yeah, that's all.
Is it-
But we'll work towards,
Yeah.
coming up with a good way to
It's an
try and handle it.
Conundrum,
It is.
yeah.
There's really no easy way around the certificate of compliance coming from the subdivision and from the lot.
And the individual lots.
It's, if there was a way to solve that problem, it would be famous.
Okay.
Instead of infamous.
Thanks, Steve.
No problem.
I'll just set that must go in that Evangeline folder.
Yeah.
We'll just leave it over. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
DeVal, 87 Maple Street, restoration, replication, disturbed wetlands.
Did you go yesterday?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brad Brodsky, and I represent Ken DeVal is to my right and your left, and we're here with Brad Holmes. This is a continued hearing on a notice of intent to resolve an outstanding enforcement issue. Brad has proposed a woodland, essentially restoration project. I believe you submitted today some minor modifications to that based upon the site visit that we had yesterday. But we reviewed this extensively with Pat and with various members of the commission. And unless there are any questions, We'd ask this evening that the commission close the public hearing and issue an order of conditions. I would also ask that the commission also please at least have a vote to grant us permission to go onto the town property to perform the work. I will need to negotiate a license and site access agreement with town council in order to handle all of the details. But it'd be good on the record to make sure that, the commission has granted us the permission, and then we can work out the details with town council.
Penny?
No, I was very happy with what I saw and what we spoke about yesterday. I don't have any issues.
Bill?
You guys worked this out yesterday, right? So you guys
Yeah.
came up with a plan
I
that
think
you're happy with?
it looks good. Richard?
And didn't it come over on, online today? Didn't we see a drawing and a?
Revised, you said
That was
something.
the
yeah.
revised with.
Yeah, you, Brad said
Right.
something later on in the
Last-minute
day.
changes based upon the
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah, but no, from that standpoint, looked good.
Lisa?
I think it'll be interesting to see how everything plays out with the unique way
Yeah,
it's going to be done.
I do too. Be a little time will have to pass, but I
Yes,
think it'll
lots of
be.
Take the little
I think it's-
photos.
Pat, you want to add anything?
Well, I had a question for Brad on, in the plan, is the specifics about the removal of the boulders and that swale down the side there, is that spelled out?
Yes, it's proposed for removal. It's actually on the plan.
Okay, it just says
to be
removal,
removed,
okay.
Yes.
And the other thing, it's probably more for Adam, is the access into the site, would it be down that main gravel drive that the town would have access that way, or how is it gonna
I
be?
think our access to that is off of Old Oak and Bucket Road. There's a
Okay.
well site, the town has a well site.
And there's a way to walk in?
Yeah, you have to walk through the woods for a stretch, but
If we had to do some cutting, I mean, is there gonna be possible access down that road if, if we had to get a crew in there to do some work on the piece that is on our property?
right.
I mean, you may have a single-family home out there at some point, right? So I'm just wondering how, if there's a reason to get in there, if we have any way.
Well, I mean, I know we can get from the back, but we'd have to go through the woods, so we wouldn't be able to get any equipment without making some sort of access. There might even be a brook to go over there.
And it's been like that forever.
Okay. And it seems like the cutting part, it's gonna be your people doing the tree removal, so.
Correct.
that won't be
So it'd just be any I mean, I'd obviously like to see this without a lot of maintenance. I know we talked about going back and doing different things, but personally, I'd just like to see how this just grows up.
Brad removed that.
Move that
today.
in the letter.
And the only thing that we might have to watch for is some invasives, and in that case, that might be like handwork or something like that. I think that's the part to monitor more than anything else, is that all of a sudden we didn't have like,
Bittersweet,
yeah, something like that, which
choking everything.
in a way is something we'll have to just see, So,
Maybe you find some goats that like bittersweet.
Do we have to qualify at all the town access to land in terms of what goes on it, or?
I think we have everything in the plan. I think as Attorney Brodsky just, if we can if we can vote for this and at the same time vote that they should have access to the town property to do this plan, and as long as we have some verbiage in there, I think, for going in to review it and monitor it, that sort of thing, we want to just make sure that it's done the way it's spelled out.
Yeah, and the town properties returned to the original condition or whatever, if they have to bring in equipment or something like that. or-
Right.
Well, and we discussed this. I mean, what I propose is, I'll work this out with Jim Toomey, but, it's a license for a certain period of time to go onto the town property to do the work. And there'll be conditions for doing the work. One, I mean, you've already approved it, but, we can put in, you typically have in my agreement, you've got to, approve the work prior to performing it, supervision, insurance, so all the details for getting that done. So perhaps when you make your vote to approve access, it's subject to a mutually agreeable site access agreement to be negotiated between the parties.
Be great.
Perfectly appropriate, and
Like you said.
The other thing too is one of the main things we're trying to have done is the wetland replication. To be done this spring, started with.
right, I think Ken has indicated he's very anxious to get this all done and behind him.
Yeah.
Yep.
So while we would theoretically have 3 years to
Pretty
do
research,
it,
yeah.
he wants to do it ASAP.
Okay.
And in fact, he was asking me, well, how soon are we gonna get the orders? How soon can you get the access agreement in place? Because he wants to get working on this.
Yeah. Okay. I'm good with all of that.
Yeah, and if Brad's doing the work, we could meet, and we could go out there soon.
Okay.
Right.
So I make a motion to close.
I don't think it's rescind, or what do we,
I'd have to look at how we worded this.
what do you think, Mr. Brodsky? What do we want to make a motion?
Well, it says it's a wetlands hearing.
Yeah,
Well, I think we
It's
continued.
on a
We
restoration
had the
plan.
notice and we just
Right,
continued.
we filed
the
All right, so we'll
Right,
close.
Right.
So it's continued hearing on
Right.
a notice.
And then do you
That's
have to
right.
put that grant permission to,
it's been greatly
Signed off on the
revised.
wetland part, but we still continued because of
Wait,
this.
we'll
act.
do
he
one
wants
thing
a
at
vote
time.
for that, all right.
Yeah,
So a motion to close.
first we'll make a
Second.
motion to close.
All in favor?
All right,
And then we'll make a motion for,
to grant permission to town access land subject to mutual agreement.
Great.
What he said.
If I may suggest a mutually agreeable site access agreement. And-
Or that.
Yes.
Wait.
What he said.
Yeah.
Second.
All in favor?
All right,
Thank you very much.
all
I
right.
really appreciate your willingness to
Flexibility on this.
participate there. I think it's,
No, no, thank you.
thank you.
you that will.
Good for you for driving that thing and being a little imaginative.
I think it'll be interesting
I think
to
it'll be
see.
cool.
Well, and only, the sad part is that I can remember going down there as a kid and all those pine trees weren't there, so.
Yeah,
Hate to say that.
of course if it blows up, then you're screwed.
Well,
Yeah.
it's far enough back in the woods, no one will really know.
Yeah.
Cornell, Great Rock Island, new build.
Sweet Jesus.
We're Paul setting up. Jim Warburg, I'm here on behalf of the Connell family with Paul Marabito. Betsy Connell and her husband Ken are here tonight also. And I see Josh is there. And I think I saw the report earlier today, having the stormwater issues, and I think that Paul and Greg Tansey have worked with Josh to come up with something that I think addresses
Frank, that's the report I got today.
This was,
Yes.
yeah,
I didn't know if you read it.
I got them too.
okay. You just got it because I had those little pink boots in the corner.
Yes. I don't know where that printed, because it wasn't on my screen. Whatever, I just thought you might want to see what the report said, that they completed everything as planned.
Yeah,
Wasn't there, yeah, there was one final tweak which we did get to, right?
Yeah.
The third set of revised plans, right?
Yes, that's what
I
we.
don't know how you could get all this topography.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Paul Maravito from Ross Engineering Company, representing the owner and applicant.
Okay, did everybody see that wants
Might
to,
wanna swing it a bit, just a bit that way.
Rich, there was like a
No, I'm-
mirror over this.
I'm thinking that there's people in the audience that
Can the
want to see Paul.
camera pick it up
Can
that
we-
way?
If you kind of
Yeah, you
back
got
the
it?
easel up. Yeah, no, he's got it. Yeah. Can you see it, Lisa, enough to,
You see that now?
Yes, I can.
okay? We can follow.
At the last meeting, we had presented the project, just to give you a very brief overview. applicant's proposal to construct a single-family dwelling on one of two islands the family owns, this being Great Rock, where the proposed dwelling is to be located at the upper portion of it. There's a separate island behind it known as Little Rock Island. The access would be from Glades Road to an existing 12-foot wide right-of-way shown on the Land Court plan. The line in yellow is the property line. So starting at the property line, we would have a paved driveway going up to a proposed hammerhead for the emergency vehicles to turn around in this area here. This front portion would have what we call pervious pavement to absorb some of the water that would be coming down the driveway. These pink lines you see, this first line represents the top of the coastal bank. There's 3 resource areas here. One is the top of the coastal bank, which is a physical feature of the land that's based upon the elevation change. It is not based upon any vegetation. This is all upland along this first line here. The lower one is the edge of the salt marsh.
This
When we
darker
found
black one.
conservation, we got
It's the wetlands
seek
line.
approval to work within 100 feet of the uppermost resource area, which is the top of the coastal bank. This is a 50-foot setback from the coastal bank, and this is a 100-foot buffer. So within the 100-foot buffer in this area here, we're proposing to construct a driveway that would service the home, as well as some storm water management infrastructure. The town of Scituate has a stormwater bylaw, and the requirement for that is that you do not increase the volume of water leaving your site. There are many methods that you can use to accomplish that goal. And what we've done is, in the area of the house, we have a subsurface recharge chamber. Further downhill, there's a interceptor trench, which will accept some water and I'll leach it into the soil adjacent to it. There's also a rain guard in this area here that would overflow in periods of heavy rain and go into, let's say, a smaller stilling basin. From here, the stilling basin would go into the subsurface. There's also one on the other side of the driveway. The trench is going to a catch basin on each side of the driveway. The construction of a storm scepter, which will collect the water and treat it. And from there, it'll go to a head wall and out into the salt marsh, which is tidal. We've designed it in a way that in this area here, there's a small wall. I got to blow up this area here, easy to see. In the area of this hammerhead, there's actually a burning here. The above properties here, or this is just in one here. We don't propose grading to the rear portion of the marsh. And this is just in one. That's a lawn area, there's also going to be some recharge, for the town of Scituate stormwater bylaw. At the last meeting, it was decided to have the project go out for peer review, and it has done so. There were some changes made to the plan. We made those, and I believe Josh Bosch and Merrill submitted the final report today. There was one other question that came up at the last meeting, and the question was, what do we have for a septic system and where is it? The septic system is in this area here. This is the location it could be in. I submitted to you a package on January 29th. Included in there was this plan here showing the test pit locations that were performed several years ago. There are 3 test pits on the northern part of the island, only one was suitable. This area here was fairly flat, and it was like a washout plant, a glacial outwash. This was all sand and gravel area in here, and this is the only place we had suitable soil. To have a septic system in Scituate, you need at least 4 suitable test pits. We only had 1 suitable test pit in this area here. What we did, and I explained this in the letter, when we started out, we went right up the middle of the island, and we started to go off on a grid about every 50 to 75 feet in each direction. And then, we started here, we worked in here, we came to here, and then we went to the back island. And when we were coming back through the marsh of the right-of-way, we came through here and we started digging here, and this is where we found the soil. This area here is large enough for 25 bedrooms, but we're going to use it for the one proposed bedroom. And I think I showed you this at the last meeting. This is the approved septic system
8
plan.
proposed bedrooms.
One proposed bedroom? How many?
Oh, did I say one? No.
Yeah, you
8,
did.
8.
Eight, yeah, okay.
8 proposed bedrooms. This is the approved septic system plan with the test pit information. I also submitted the test pit information for these test holes as well, as you asked. So, I think with that, I'll
That whole thing.
end
in the
my
150.
presentation and answer any questions you may have.
No.
Um,
All of this is in the.
Do we want to start from hearing from the consultant engineer,
Yeah, I would think so.
if you don't mind?
Big turnaround.
That'd be a good thing.
I believe
So for anybody in the audience that doesn't know, when a project is, comes before the Conservation Commission for a notice of intent, if it's a development like this and they disturb more than 5,000 square feet of area, they also have to do what they call a stormwater review. We don't review the septic system, but we review the stormwater to make sure that no water is discharged onto other properties. And because it's fairly technical, we'll hire an outside consultant to review the work that Mr. Marabito's firm did, and in this case, it's Merrill Engineering. And Mr. Bose.
My name is Joshua Bose from Merrill Corporation in Hanover, and as the chairman said, we were hired to review this project in its compliance with the stormwater management bylaw that's in place and the regulations that are in place in the town of Scituate. The initial design that was submitted to our office, we had made a number of comments on that initial design, and some of those comments were related to low-impact development. The original design essentially had the runoff directed to one basin, and that basin was at the bottom of the driveway, at the lowest point of the property. And that really didn't meet some of the goals of the low-impact development section of the regulation. So that was one of our general comments regarding that. The other comments, there was a number of other comments on the original design, and a lot of them were technical, technical in nature. And we identify in every project we look at each project individually, and on this particular project, we identified the runoff down to the lowest point of the property as a critical issue, if you will, or potential critical issue on this project. So a lot of our comments were related to documenting for the file and for the approval that if the commissioner were felt so inclined to approve, documenting that there was no increase of runoff off the property, which is one of the standards that are that's in the regulations. So we have, at the end of our initial letter, we had, I think, 21 comments, and most of those comments were related to technical issues of the calculations, and they were related to some maintenance issues, such as commenting or raising concern about snow being plowed into the swales, and thus, blocking the swales, and the swales didn't work as they were intended in the design. Following that letter that was submitted to the commission through Pat, we were requested to meet with Greg Tansey at Ross Engineering and go over the comments. We went over the comments with Greg, and we were presented with revised plans. Those revised plans were dated 2/14, and the calcs were also dated 2/14. Those the revised plans had a significantly or substantially improved approach to the stormwater management. There was a lot of features added, stormwater management features added to the design on those plans, and the final plans that you have here, basically, that's what the second revision was. Is that approach? It's all those features. The only the outstanding comments I had on that second set of revised plans were all really technical in nature. Times of concentration, cover types, soil types. They were very technical, so they didn't really result in any changes to the plans other than a few minor items, clarification items. but the calcs were updated. And today, my office received the revised, a final set of plans that I reviewed, and also a final set of calcs with a few tweaks here and there, if you will. And all of those, the plans and all of the calcs and the comments I initially had were addressed in the plans I received today, and I issued a letter today saying such. The one outstanding comment, I wouldn't say it's an outstanding comment, but the one thing I think that I would suggest the commission make sure is in the order of conditions is the maintenance of the stormwater features, because it's important to maintain these features so that they operate as they are designed, and specifically in this particular project, the snow removal is, provisions to make sure the snow is removed and not in place in the proper areas which have been identified on the plan, and they don't clog the drainage features that are out there, so. You have to just answer
Anybody have any
questions.
questions for?
For you, no. If you feel everything's been taken care of, I'm happy.
From a drainage perspective, absolutely.
Yes, from the drainage,
Yes.
that's all we're looking
Yes.
at right
Yeah, just to clarify this, the way that I read your note, I think it was the second or third revision, you said there's no margin for error here. I want to be absolutely sure that there's no, because I know we have abutters here, that I want to be absolutely sure that there's no chance of water going on to an abutter's property, and we seem to have reached that point, at least with the stormwater calculations.
Yes,
Yeah.
the regulations require us to, or require the applicant to demonstrate no increase in runoff over the property line at appropriate analysis points, and that was my main focus. And the final calculations in the plans meet that requirement.
All we're talking about now is stormwater, we're not talking about general, we're just talking about his.
Well, I think while he's up here, while Josh is up here, we'll do the stormwater, and then we can talk about other
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
great.
issues. Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
I'm just going to open up to members for questions first, and then we'll work our way around. Penny?
On this, I don't have questions. I do, can we?
Jump right in. The whole project.
The whole project.
Off stormwater, yeah.
Okay, I have a question that, it appears to me that the roadway up to the house, okay, it is going through the 50 and 100-foot buffer. What mitigation would you like to offer us to go into the 50, especially?
Well,
The roadway has to come in and the turnaround. Those are in buffer zones.
One of the things that we did at the bottom of the hill was put in that turnaround for the fire
Yeah.
department.
Right?
I spoke to the fire chief on a previous project, that was something they were looking for, because they don't have the ability to turn around that well in the back. And that's why we had the hammerhead. Normally, we wouldn't put one there, because the driveway up at the garage would be sufficient for the vehicles to go up there and turn around. So we did provide that right at the bottom of the hill there. We do have some plantings on that project, they're doing landscaping around the house. But in the 50 or 100-foot buffer, again, the 50 and 100-foot buffer is measured from the coastal bank. If you were to measure from the edge of the marsh, it'd be a lot smaller, because the coastal bank is up on the side of the hill,
Yeah?
which is quite a ways uphill on the edge of the marsh. But because that's a resource area, that's where we're measuring the 50-foot buffer from. We're actually way uphill in the marsh to the edge of the 50-foot buffer. We don't have any mitigation at the present time down there. Yeah, the only thing I could think of is putting some, maybe a landscape area in the bottom here. Down in here. This area here. We could do some,
Something to think about, Paul.
Pardon?
It is something to think about that I want to throw out.
Well, one of the things I just speak to that is, there is, the utilizations in, distributed here in the site are relatively small, and this is a huge lot area, and by design, the way this project's been designed has been very conscious. This is a 10,000 square foot zone. This is an enormous area, the vast majority of which is natural and will remain natural, and so, I'll bring coals to Newcastle, to plant some more bushes there. The fact that we have, in essence, that's the only access that is there. as a practical matter, well, there is access over the marsh.
Yeah.
But, you know, and so part of the mitigation of this is we're going over uplands. We're not going over, you know, marsh. We're not in here trying to claim this is our limited access to this is via the existing easements we have over the marsh, because we don't have any intention, we don't want to use those. And it's not, from an environmental standpoint, this is a much more desirable way to handle things.
The
Paul,
area
how
where
was-
that driveway is, at the lower end, that's in what we call land subject to coastal storm flowage.
Yes.
On the state regs, there are no performance standards for that's just an area that would flood in certain storms. You know, and once you leave the hammerhead, you start going up that hill pretty quick. And we put the hammerhead up out of the flood zone for the equipment, because I know they do have problems with flooding when they get caught on Glades Road.
It is up that way?
How is that sized, Paul, the hammerhead? Did the police or fire have a size that they required on that, or?
They do 20, they look for a 20-foot width and a 30-foot radius. If they want to turn around, they can do that. And they could also go up to the house as well and turn around the driveway if they had to. They could also park their vehicles up along the driveway if they wanted to get them out of the floodwaters on Glades Road. So there's plenty of room for them to not be out of harm's way, you know, if they get stuck.
Bill?
That island is 7.5 acres, and about 7.1 of it is all upland. And you can see by the plan that the greater part of that island is going to stay in its natural state. There's really no reason to do any work beyond the limits that we show. I mean, that's one of the nice features about the island. The vegetation is there, the trees are old, because a lot of them are grown in the ledge, but they provide a nice buffer around the perimeter of that island.
Well, we took a little field trip up there, the whole commission, and but I wish I had actually seen where the hammerhead and the driveway actually were, but we just, went up a path. So I didn't have a bearing of what was what.
It's in the path area.
But
Richard? Or Bill, I'm sorry.
Can you clarify for me, so to get to the driveway, you're going from a street over what? Over a right-of-way? What is it? It's a... So to get from the
Glades Road.
Glades Road, you're going over,
If the
that,
existing right away, if there's a half a dozen other houses, that's how they
Yeah.
access their properties.
and then that existing right-of-way will go right into the driveway,
Yes.
right?
Correct.
Right, okay.
Paul, could you come up here? Could I just ask you a question? Then I'll have a better idea, and Bill might too. Is this the shed that's there that's on stilts? Because we walked around a
The
shed.
old house that's there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this it?
Let's see, you have the wood show up?
This is the 20 right here.
This is the new one. Yeah, no, well, now I have a better idea of where this is, because we walked here and went in
Yeah,
this way.
This is a retaining wall for that house. the septic
Right,
system.
okay, so it's right
And
there.
I guess as you park from here and you walk in.
Actually, we didn't, but that's okay.
We walked around,
Oh, you did?
yeah, and then went up, because that's how I know that old house was there. We walked past it and went up a path over here, and came back down. So now I have a better idea. Thank you.
So we'll have a 20 by 30-foot area in the 50 being cleared out,
Yeah, this is
inside the
This
50.
is a 30-foot radius, and this is 20 feet. This is 20 feet, so if you can pull them back out. with
But that's all within the 50-foot zone, am I correct? Or is he correct?
Yeah.
Sorry, Bill.
That's all inside the 50.
Yes, it's within 50 feet of the coastal bay.
Okay, I'm good.
That's what I wanted to know.
Well,
I
I
got
wouldn't
it.
say good, but...
Well, you have a question answered.
Lisa?
I'm good.
Pat, do you want to
Well, I was just gonna say that since the first plan that we saw, there were a number of recommendations about more low-impact development and moving some of the detention basins out of the buffer area, and those have been accomplished in the most recent plan. So I spent a lot of time talking with Josh about this, and, you know, there's some swales put in there, and there can't be very much more low-impact development just because it's all ledge up there. So I think where the efforts were made, I think that's probably the only place. The other thing is down in the buffer area at the beginning of the driveway where you were just talking about, originally there was a stormwater structure in there. That's no longer in there, so that's been moved away from the neighborhood, which I thought was an improvement to the plan. I think it leaves more of the buffer undisturbed. So if we're looking at just the stormwater impacts, I think they've done a lot since the beginning of the submission to, you know, improve the stormwater, so.
Maybe,
I was just gonna say, I just wanna make sure I have this in my mind. Is that all gonna be paved?
Yes, it is paved.
Where the turnaround is, the hammerhead?
That's, where the turnaround is gonna be pervious pavement. There's a
Yes,
series of catch basins on the uphill side of the turnaround. From those catch basins downhill to the property line, that'll be pervious
I got
pavement.
it.
There's also a storm scepter in there that the catch basin is flowing to, which will also treat the water before it ends up in the marsh.
Okay, thank you.
if everybody's all set here for the moment, I want to open this up to the, anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this? Yes, sir.
Michael McDonough, 157 Glades Road, on the house on the right-hand side of the, because you guys call it the right-of-way, I call it a driveway. Massive amounts of questions and concerns. Not a massive, I'm sorry, that's the wrong thing to say. We've never had a fire truck, an ambulance, or anything be able to turn around in the driveway, let alone get down the driveway. I know we had a few neighbors be taken out, and they've parked on Glades Road and brought them out on the stretcher up the driveway. So I don't see how the turnaround is gonna do anything down the end of what they're proposing, when a fire truck or anything can't even get down there. To the best of our knowledge, I've never seen one even go down. When the island was on fire, they couldn't get fire trucks down there. A number of, probably 20 years ago, they had to have the small forestry truck go down, and then they were humping hose up there. So I've never seen a fire truck go down my driveway. I don't know if maybe the fire chief says differently, he can get down there, but I've never seen one go down the driveway.
Did we get approval from the fire department yet? No.
It's been submitted to the fire.
Yeah, okay.
I just think we want to be careful of what our.
Yeah, right, yes.
We're
yep,
glad to
yep.
hear your concerns.
Yeah.
That was bringing you to
You can
point.
express them, but I think, realize that this is a wetlands hearing, and then it's also a stormwater piece. Not that you don't have legitimate concerns, and there may be, not to pass the buck, but at some point they have to get a building permit, and there may be some concerns for the fire department. But I think that the reason that they're putting this hammerhead at the bottom, I mean, when I looked at it, I was trying to figure out why it wasn't further up the hill. But in some ways, it sort of makes sense if there is to be some sort of, I hear what you're saying, it's a tight. A lot of times after a bad storm, they're not gonna drive a truck down there because the road might not even be there.
Another question. You're saying that you're gonna have asphalt down there, correct?
No.
Can you define impervious,
It means it's not asphalt, it's something that the water will go through.
so reprocessed or something like that?
Oh, anyway,
No, it's an actual product, it's called pervious pavement, it looks like popcorn, and there's a series of various side stones and sand and gravel below it.
Okay.
The purpose of that is to let the water go through and filter itself to the bases about that thick below it.
Okay.
Different layers.
but it does look like asphalt. It's just, it's asphalt that's porous.
Okay, all right. And where does that start and stop?
Maybe you can show that, Paul.
It's gonna start at the property line,
Okay?
Forest starts here at the property line and it goes up to this area where the two catch basins are.
Okay, right,
So it's in this area here.
okay, and I'm looking at that and I see, it looks like you're gonna cut a new roadway
It's gotta
into
be made up.
the island?
Yeah, this is the 12-foot right of way in here.
Mm-hmm.
So what they're gonna do is to, add it to the rear of the property line. Once they get to the property, this would be the purpose there in this area here.
Okay, why not just stay on the existing town right of way? Why cut a new right of way in?
Because the, legal right of way to that property on the land court plan starts at Glades Road and goes in this area here. They don't have a right to come in here.
As far as we've always been told, that was the town right of way, was all the way back to what you consider the little shack out back there.
Yeah.
We don't have any information that we know shown that as a town right of way, but on the land court plan, land court plan 3705, it's quite old. The 12-foot right of way starts at Glades Road and goes up to their property.
Okay.
We surveyed that in the plans. and we-
Again, I think some of these things, you're gonna be going before the zoning board,
Yes.
is that right?
I'm just.
No, no, I just want you to understand where you're,
I'm just saying they cut down a lot of vegetation just to put another road in.
well, that's a concern. I just wanna make sure that we're clear on which direction we're going. If your concern is the materials that's being cut, that's fine. I just, in terms of actually being able to drive onto the property,
Yeah,
That's
I was leading up to it because I know there's a lot of bushes there, there's a lot of trees there, and even going up the hill, you know, you're excavating, I think, a lot of material there. I'm not trying to be nitpicky. I'm
no,
just trying to see
no,
what's
but
going on.
and I'm glad to hear it. We wanna vet all these issues. I just want you to understand that our purview is not.
You stop at a certain point.
Right, we'll look at the disturbance of the wetlands, we'll look at the stormwater pieces, and that sort of thing, how they, if they can legally get onto the island, that's not, we got enough things to pursue.
Okay.
But I appreciate,
I will try.
and I think what Penny, no. What Penny asked them was what sort of mitigation they were offering for that disturbance.
Oh, okay.
So they're going to cut a road through vegetation that you brought up. So typically, when people work in a buffer zone or whatever, they offer some form of what we call mitigation. Replace some of the plants, do some of that thing. What I think Mr. Armberger and Mr. Marabito said is that they're basically proposing one single-family home on almost 7 acres in an area that, you know, like your home and other homes around there, there's literally a home on less than 10,000 square feet. In this particular case, they're saying they're gonna put one home on 7 acres of land, and that's part of their mitigation, that they're not going to disturb a tremendous amount of area on that island. Am I correct? Okay.
Can I clarify something real quick? We
Sure.
show the pervious pavement in the Hammerhead area, and then you start going up in elevation on the driveway. Is that the same material, or is that different material?
It's gonna be standard pavement.
Oh, that's
Standard
regular,
pavement.
okay.
So that is a good height.
Yep,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Is this proposed home condominium with 8 bedrooms in it? And the second part of the question is, if they get granted this home, are they then allowed to build an accessory dwelling of 60% the size of the...
Well, first of all, it's not a Conservation Commission question, but to answer that, whoever, the Cornell family is going to sell this to someone who's gonna build the house. And if there's any deviation or changes of any footprints or any proposed additional construction that's within the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, they'd have to come back for a new permit. So the only thing the Conservation Commission is approving is what is exactly what is proposed.
I don't know if you were here early on, but we were discussing what could happen in a subdivision where a project is approved, and the roadways and the wetlands issues are dealt with. But as Mr. Armberger just said, they're gonna sell this piece of property to someone else, who's probably gonna wanna build a home different than is shown on that footprint. I'm assuming that they want to give those people a lot of latitude in terms of the number of bedrooms. But anybody that makes a change to that footprint or up on top of there is going to have to come back before the commission. If the change is fairly insignificant in nature, they might be able to ask for an amendment. If it's significant, they may have to file a new notice. So if someone were to make a big change from what they had there, you'd have the opportunity to review that. Actually, either way, an amendment, there'd be a public notice, or if they make something significant. But that would be a whole new hearing.
Right.
But the second part of the question was, if that is granted, can they then build an accessory dwelling 60% the size of the original?
I don't feel comfortable answering that
Oh,
question.
the answer to that, if you're gonna do that, number one, if it was in the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, you would need their permission for a whole new filing for that, number one. And number two, if you're gonna do that, that's a separate special permit procedure that is issued by the planning board of the town of Scituate.
The reason for my question was, in the previous submittal for development on this that was turned down, you tried to build 4 or 5 homes up there in a subdivision, and you didn't have the frontage to get into the property.
Well, first of all, we didn't try to build anything.
You
It
may
wasn't our
not have, but there
application.
was a proposal before the board before FAR.
Well, I don't understand what the question was.
Pardon me?
What was the question?
Question is a accessory dwelling allowed in that property?
Well, there's a question, there's zoning questions, there's land use, from a Conservation Commission, as I said earlier, which is what we're talking about here, if anything was required, there'd have to be an additional filing with the Conservation Commission that would be independent of this. But I'm just telling you for edification purposes, if anyone wanted to sought an accessory dwelling, they have to go through an entirely separate special permit proceeding with the planning board of the town of Scituate. They have the special permit granting authority for that.
Yes, ma'am.
The septic system that's going to be proposed.
And your name is?
Susan Graham.
Actually, I should have got both there.
Bill Graham.
Bill Graham.
14 Tilden Ave. In my name. You have a septic system for 24 bedrooms.
No.
No, for 8.
No.
8
No,
bedrooms.
no.
I think what they said, that the
oversized.
area that is there has the potential to, if they constructed it, they could construct up to 24 bedrooms. But what they're proposing is an 8-bedroom septic system.
And that abuts the marsh where the septic system is going to
You
go?
want to flip the plan back, please, Paul?
Yeah, it's in, I said it's in the second part.
This is the septic system, the marsh is down in here.
Right.
This first purple one is the one we have to measure. This is the top of the coastal bank.
Uh-huh.
The septic system has to be at least 50 feet back from here, not from the marsh. So it's actually further back from the marsh.
Paul, what's the elevation of the septic system area?
The elevation,
15 feet. This is elevation 15, that line that comes around. It's probably 15.
It's between 14 and 15.
proposed elevation over the system is going to be,
13, 14.
it varies from 19.8 to 18.7.
Okay. And the proposed new flood zone is 18 feet in that area?
It's 18, and they do exactly.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I apologize, I did walk in a tad late because I got stuck commuting.
Sure.
So my name's Jackie Beatty Sandell, my address is 147R Glades Road. And you probably already discussed this, but as the conservation committee, have people looked into the impact to the wetlands and also the rare species that are on the, in the marsh, and the fact that, I don't know, when I bought my house, I was told that I couldn't touch it whatsoever, and so building on an island in the center of the marsh, to me, sounds, I'm kind of anti-conservation. Has that sort of analysis been done on the impact on the rare species that live there? Because looking on the internet, there are definitely quite a few. And then also, I guess I'm still, and I realize I came in, you might have covered this, but the marsh floods completely back to the back of Glades Road. How is the road going to be constructed so that it's not going to flood? Because the marsh travels right up there. Is it going to be elevated? Is it going to be like a bridge? How is it going to be formed, actually, to A, not wash into the marsh, causing further damage to the marsh, and B, just be passable for emergency purposes and the residents there?
Why don't we let them start to pick off a couple of your questions? So the first one had to do with habitat and disturbance of the wetlands, and we did start to discuss that. I'm not sure if you were here, but the question is that they'll be cutting their driveway through a buffer zone, and we asked about mitigation for that, and I don't know if you heard that piece of it, but
The mitigation, though, if you're on an island, right, there's only so much you can do. So if you disturb the marsh, where do you put it back if you're already out into the ocean? That's
We're not
another-
disturbing any marsh.
We aren't,
We're not
we
disturbing
aren't
any
altering any marsh. We're
You're not
going over,
altering any
no.
marsh?
Zero.
No, we're going over upland. There's existing upland at the entrance to the island that we're gonna go over. We aren't filling any wetland, we aren't filling salt marsh. We aren't filling any resource area. We don't need to.
Then
Okay.
how does the road get there? That's the part I'm confused.
well, we're kind of backtracking a little bit, but Paul, could you real quick go to that second page and just show where the road is being constructed?
From Glades Road, there's an existing 12-foot right-of-way that provides access up to their property here. So the plan is to come in along the right-of-way. At the property line here, we're gonna start the pavement and go up to the house. This is an existing house here. There's a house here, and one here, and one here. This existing right-of-way services these homes as well, plus this one here.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I've walked over in that existing right-of-way. It's basically a dirt path. I imagine it washes away with the marsh the way
It's
most
just a
places
gravel
do.
road.
Yeah.
On a flood tide, it's covered.
On a flood tide, it's covered, is my point. So I guess what are,
The elevation show that it would be.
Well, the septic systems of the homes at the end of that path are elevated. And I just don't know how you're going to elevate your road in order to go up the hill?
No,
No?
no, we aren't gonna elevate the ground in here at all. What we're gonna do is to come into the property and we start to elevate it in this area here. There's a slight change in grade, and then we're pretty much, this is a fairly level area. You know, it's got a slight slope to it to get the drainage down and back into the marsh. And from here, we're just gonna follow the existing slope of the hill going up.
I guess every time it's high tide, all of this is all water. All water, and I'm not talking full moon tide, I'm talking the one that happens all the time. So you're just gonna let the road wash away and leave the people, I
No.
mean, are they gonna have a boat?
No, you
No, no, I think
They can't.
they're gonna get to the way to their house, the way everyone else in the neighborhood gets to their house.
Well, no one else is in the middle of the marsh, is my point. So I
Well,
would just
how-
imagine.
Paul, I mean, here's the island.
This,
What do you have, it's half dozen houses within 100 feet?
this is the marsh in here. This is the marsh over here. This whole area here is all upland. This is not marsh. You got houses in here, you've got the upland area here. The marsh comes in like this, it goes here and it goes along the back of the houses. Comes down here, and it goes along here, and it wraps around. None of this is marsh. We're near the marsh for the roadway.
Well, I think that's a bit of a technicality. If you have an island that's jutting out into the marsh, it's kind of part of the marsh. But I hear you.
Go back and forth.
You know, okay, I think we gotta keep on to the, what maybe you didn't hear or what was done, and I don't wanna keep backing up because there's other hearings after this as well. What our concern was from the Conservation Commission standpoint is disturbance in the buffer zone, the resource area. And then because the project has jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, we also do the stormwater piece. So what they showed early on, there was testimony from Mr. Marbito and then from our consulting engineer as to whether any runoff would go off the island or off where they've disturbed, or the road that they built, and they showed us that they've built the proper structures and things like that. So what we're trying to address is disturbance in the wetlands, okay, and then the stormwater piece of that.
I just had a comment on the habitat area that you talked about, the marsh, some of the marsh areas, but the island itself, if you look at natural heritage habitat maps, none of the island is part of a protected habitat area. Otherwise, they would have had do a lot more mitigation around that. So, I mean, if they're able to stay out of the marsh, whether they build on an island or not isn't gonna trigger a natural heritage file.
Because I was looking at, species travel, right? So they're
Right.
all in the marsh.
Yeah.
That's right there.
Well, what the state does is they survey the entire state, and they have this biomap, actually, it's posted outside, and they have specific areas that are of concern. And if we were anywhere near one of those areas, that would trigger a whole different thing with natural heritage and the state. But the state does not recognize that area as having a concern for endangered, concerned, or threatened species.
Anybody, do you have another question? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
And your name is?
Catherine Ellers, I live on 151 Glades Road. I have one concern, it's not the wetlands, it's probably for another discussion at another time, but I'm going to bring it to the table anyway, is the integrity of our road. I know we're due for a new paved road during the spring, Glades Road, right now it's all beaten up with all the storms we've had. But the end of, from Glades Road, from about 100 down, there are very, very old homes that have been there for several decades. I live in one of them, although my front of my house has had a couple of facelifts. But I noticed that the road is very, very narrow, and when trucks go down the road, heavy trucks, my house literally shakes. And I'm very concerned about the increased traffic in the very narrow road with no sidewalks. And the seawall is kind of getting a little bit up, and everything just shakes. And it's, the beach area is slightly undermined as it is, and with the increased traffic and the building, I'm very concerned. About my house, I've got deep cracks in the wall. And I've seen it after huge heavy trucks have gone by. And my house is pretty stable. I've just had it lifted, and it's very stable. But there are houses that are much older than mine even, and they're very small cottages, and it's a small cottage area with a very narrow road, and I do remember the turnaround in the driveway. Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that they actually, in order to turn around, they have to move one of the telephone poles. And if they did it, it would block somebody's living room window, their view. And I know that was an issue the last time we went through all this. But anyway, I'm just bringing that to the table. My concern is the road, the size of the road, it's narrow. Things are pretty beaten up.
Again, I appreciate your concern, but I'd like to try to stick to the wetlands piece and the drainage piece. I mean, I'm glad to let either one of you address a piece of that if you feel like you should, but I don't see how it pertains necessarily to ours. We understand that Glades Road, the seawall is an issue. We're looking at seawall issues. Certainly, that's a concern. I'm assuming that you'll be working, all the neighbors and the folks that are developing here are gonna have to work together to maintain that road that goes down there, but it's not our purview, although if you do decide to do additional work to that road, you do have to notify the commission.
Well, it impacts us in a way that generally the outcome, it will impact us, the road, the houses that exist there, you know, cracks and everything,
Yeah.
eventually, that's just, you know, down.
Sure. Well, hopefully,
It is all one
Building and
project,
zoning and
impacts
planning and-
areas.
right, right. Okay.
Steve.
Steve?
Very quickly, if I can, just address 2 points. Steve Bjorklund, I had been involved in this project a number of years ago, met some of the people here, I don't remember everybody's name. We actually measured the width of Glades Road, and I think the Driftway and Route 3A are the only 2 streets wider in the town of Scituate than that end of Glades Road. So the paving in that area is extremely wide on Glades Road, if you drive down there. And the gentleman that asked about the accessory dwelling, I'm not the zoning enforcement officer, but I can pretty much assure you that they can't put an accessory dwelling that's 60% the size of the house, because the bylaw only allows for 40% the size of the house. But if it's contained within the footprint that they show, they could potentially put one in without further conservation review, but they would have to get a permit, like Mr. Orenberger said, from the planning board in order to be able to do that. But it could only be 40% the size, or 750 square feet. Is my interpretation.
That just remember his disclaimer.
Yeah, that's my disclaimer.
Yeah.
I'm gonna disclaimer.
Steve, as far as the width of the road, it's 30 feet. Glades Road is 30 feet wide, and the driveway is 12 feet wide with stone walls on both sides, so there's no room for error in trying to get a truck down there.
Not gonna get a permit if the
Building
fire department
materials
doesn't.
On the
or
right of
anything
way.
else.
Yeah, on the right of way
On
is
our
different
thing.
than the road itself.
Yes, the right-of-way is 12 feet with stone walls.
Okay.
on each side.
We want to try to keep our focus on the,
I have a very stormwater
Sure.
focused question. How is this gonna be maintained? The drainage and everything? Is somebody gonna come in every year and clean out the catch basins, redo the gravel, so on and so forth?
there'll have to be a maintenance plan as part of the orders of conditions.
Yep.
Keeping there's a rain garden, the basins, the pervious pavement, all of that will have to be part of that. Was there a maintenance piece, Josh, in that?
Yes, it's a very extensive, long-term.
Yeah, I think he said it early in the thing that.
I heard
that's
talk about
one of
snow
the-
removal and stuff like that, but I didn't hear talk about like,
Sure.
when the storm comes down, because I know the sand and everything does wash right in before the house.
That'll be part of the order of conditions.
Anybody else?
When it came 151 R Glades Road, it seems to me that the number of revisions in the specs on the plan, including that, there will be regular maintenance that has to be done on this. I think a total review is in order of all the things that have to be done in this project, because, again, we're just squeaking by the letter of the law in this project.
Well,
We just did do the review.
For a long time, forever. So this should be right. All the engineering is too close.
What Mr. Bowes that spoke here, Mr. King, was our engineer we hired
Okay, all right.
to review this project. So Ross Engineering did the proposal, and then they had to pay for us to hire a consulting engineer. And in this particular case, Merrill Associates?
Corporation now.
Merrill Corporation, was hired, and then he's been back and forth, and there's been quite a bit of correspondence, and Mr. Bose made a lot of recommendations, and they made, I think, a significant number of changes, which it seemed positive to me, not being an engineer, but the number of basins, the pervious pavement, so I think a lot of that was adequately addressed. And to your point, but the other pieces everybody's said, there'll be a set of orders that say that they have to have ongoing maintenance, which probably doesn't occur with anybody else along that way. This particular lot will have additional scrutiny. I know that you have in the past had issues with your driveway, and others have there, and who knows if this driveway is gonna need additional work, and that's something that may have to come before the commission at some point in time. But that's not really our purview, is how the road is constructed. And in fairness to the applicant, we'd probably try to stick with the pieces that are. Sure, they'll have other swipes at other boards as well, so.
What about the total use of the beach area? In that, now we'll probably have an additional about 20 cars using that in Glades Road. As it is in the summertime, it's completely jammed. People are driving around houses, back to houses, getting stuck in the sand, getting stuck in the mud. Happens all the time. Now, I know it's a private beach, but there's little or no enforcement, nothing can be done about it. So this will add more fuel to the fire.
I can't speak for the police department on how they're gonna address that.
That is a natural resource area, the beach. So they will indirectly affect the beach, the beach area.
The beach.
I would only assume that people that are coming here have more than ample parking up that driveway and whatnot. But as far as extra traffic on Glades Road, that's not my purview, I'm sorry.
That's a hill. In order to build up there, you're going to have to block off the top. Isn't there a lot of granite in there?
I think
It's
almost
almost all ledge.
All right, so that, the change in that topography doesn't change the...
The distance, if we go back to the other plan, Paul can, or his assistant. Go ahead, and just, I think, Paul, what would be important to show is like where the buffer zones are, and
This is, this line here is the 100-foot buffer zone from the top of the coastal bank.
Mhm.
The marsh is actually further out. Again, the coastal bank is a physical feature where the slope of the land is under 25% slope. So because that's a resource area, that's where it's measured from. And this pink line here is 100 feet away from the top of the coastal bank that goes around the entire perimeter of the island.
Thank you.
You gonna blast?
so they could blast or jackhammer or whatever they have to do to get there.
Well, the way that's graded, we're taking out as little as we need to because it's expensive to remove the ledge.
Okay.
Most of the ledge removal will
would think.
probably be in the area of the house.
Okay. All right. Is there anybody else that has a question or would like to speak to that? Anybody else from members? So, Pat, do you have anything else to add? Okay. Can take a motion to close. Go ahead. Or if anybody feels they need any other
The
information.
only thing is, and I heard what Bill Ormer, what he said about that they don't feel as though they need mitigation. I don't know if we, the board, feel if we'll put mitigation in the orders that we just should throw it out to them if they could come up with something. I mean, that's all before we close.
I mean, I'm a proponent of mitigation.
Yeah.
And I've looked at this in terms of what's being disturbed and what could possibly be planted. I guess to some degree, I've seen prior proposals where a good amount of this was being proposed to develop, and I realized they had access issues and they didn't. I guess as much as it would be nice to see this not disturbed at all, it's, for a large area, it's a small disturbance, and the areas that are being addressed adequately. I guess the only place that I would see the potential for any additional plantings might be right around the septic system or something, because I don't think there's much you could do with the driveway, and I'm not quite so sure what that would,
Nothing would last anyway, because it's
Well,
gonna flood.
it's just something I want thrown out, so
Right.
if we do, in the next 2 weeks, come up with some brainstorm that, oh, gee, we could do this for mitigation or something, that there aren't surprises.
Penny, what do you suggest?
I'm not really suggesting, I kind of had hoped that you would have thought of that, because it is, a buffer zone, and we usually ask for, some mitigation. Because we had not addressed it at all at the other meeting.
I mean, I've just thought about what's growing there.
Yeah.
And what could be planted in addition that would be better habitat. Nothing's coming to mind, to be honest with
Same thing
you.
here.
It's such a large,
Yeah.
open, natural area, as I said, and again, from
Yeah.
a design standpoint, what the Connell family kind of directed us to do. was to have some, at least in their mind, was minimally, disturbing plan. So what they didn't do is, which you probably see unfortunately, some applications, some gamesmanship where people come in and they show you all kinds of things, knowing that they're gonna take them away, and there's your mitigation. But we, as it tried to achieve a plan up front, that already had a number of mitigating factors already built into it.
Anything in the general Minot area or in the Glades Road area could be slightly off-site that could benefit the area?
Maybe just infrastructure on that road, but it's not, but it's
I mean,
I
I guess,
know it
I guess the
doesn't.
part that in some ways, in fairness to the applicant, in order to comply with the stormwater piece and not have more runoff, they're actually having to disturb a little bit more of an area. They're putting it all back. But do you hear what I'm saying? I mean, they're reshaping this to make sure that no water goes off the property. So to comply with our stormwater piece, they're actually moving around a little bit more, but in the end, they're putting more back. I honestly wish I could say, I could think of something good to add, but it's not coming to mind.
Penny, let me offer this. I was just talking with Betsy. I think one of the issues having to do with the minor, particularly having to do with the storms, is you probably have occasion where when there's high flooding areas, you probably have debris that floats into the marsh in that area. We would be willing to offer, to post with the Conservation Commission in the marsh area here, a fund to be administered by the Conservation Commission of $3,000 to help so you could engage some people. I think that would probably be the most effective off-site thing, because my observations are after certain flood storms, all of a sudden there'll be some debris out there and you don't have the capacity to deal with that. So that's something we would offer.
I'm not trying to be a pain, it's just that, it is hard.
She doesn't have to try.
I know, Bill knows me, believe me, but I'm just saying.
No, what I'm saying is we're
I think that would be
because
wonderful. I just,
That's the hay bales.
I hear you, I'm not trying to make it more difficult, but it is
Oh, we
proper,
understand.
and I feel as though I have to give some.
No, if that's something I think that's in close proximity that would be helpful, then certainly we'd offer that. You can put that in as a condition, and we're offering it, not that you're requesting it from us, okay?
Okay, how,
I don't agree with $3,000.
I mean, it's something.
Yeah, well, that's just what I said, is there's something in the area that could help, and that certainly would.
Yeah.
I have a comment on that. I think in some cases it were unrelated to this particular parcel and was going to be something down in Glades Road. I don't think we can really ask for it. In this case, this is in a land subject to coastal storm flowage, and I think it could be an appropriate thing for them to offer as a mitigation. But, streetlights down in Glades, I think would be off limit, any of that. But I think this is related to an area they're driving in that is flood zone, and I think it's a good offer to provide cleanup. And it does help the neighborhood, but it's within our jurisdiction.
So we would keep a sum of money in escrow or whatever.
It wouldn't have to be an escrow. We'd pay it into the Conservation Commission, whatever you must have accounts that you use for dealing for work that you need done.
And then we could hire someone to do a cleanup after storms or whatever in that area.
Right, and talk to the neighborhood as to, where they think the area that needs the most cleaning is or something like that.
There's plenty of flotsam and jetsam that's gone on after
That's
a few storms.
Down at Bailey's Causeway.
Yeah. Well, right in your backyard, a lot of it works its way into that little cove as well.
All right,
I think that's
I'm ready to close. I'll make,
Can I ask one question before you close the hearing? Is one of the things is, and I think my observation on behalf of the Cannell family has been a very good cooperative process working with the commission and coming up with, we think this is with Josh Bose's help, it's actually a very good plan, and a well-thought plan that's helped us actually improve the land utilization. One of the things we are going on the 20th before the Zoning Board of Appeals. One of the things I would like to ask the Commission, even though I understand that the orders aren't ready, in addition to closing the hearing, I would like the Commission to vote this, if at all possible. And I understand that to the next meeting, you probably won't sign something, but I just want to make sure I'm going into this other meeting. We've already continued the Zoning Board meeting already from prior times because we haven't had any resolutions from a conservation standpoint, because we wanted to make sure that we had everything ironed out from this end, which I think we're at that logical juncture now.
That's kind of why I didn't want to close it until we had something
See,
on
that's-
that mitigation.
Well, that's why I gave it to you right now, so you could.
So we're closing the hearing.
Yes,
We'd have the orders on the 19th, wouldn't
And we would have orders at the next, what's our next
it?
meeting?
19th,
19. It's two weeks from tonight.
And when's your,
the 20th.
It's the following night, but all I'm asking is, I understand the orders wouldn't be signed and whatever. What I was asking is that this be, in other words, that you close the hearing and you vote that, yes, we're setting the order of conditions, subject to us to finalizing the conditions in our orders at the next meeting, or whatever it is. I don't want to find out on the 19th that you're going to vote against this. If you're going to vote against it, I'd rather have you do it tonight.
Oh, I wouldn't have been pushing for the mitigation if I was going against it.
I think that's reasonable.
I see what you're saying.
Right.
When-
If we do it for these guys, do we have to do it every time now? Is this precedent setting?
I mean, I don't see why.
Have we done it
we'd have a
before?
reason to deny it.
well, it may be something that we want to consider anyways, to either deny or, when we close the hearing, typically we go on to write the orders. And the
Right.
reason that we have time to do that is to make sure that everything that was brought up in the hearing is clarified. But we don't allow any additional information once the hearing's closed. So basically, if the commission, I think, is agreeable to this, there's no reason why they couldn't vote that they're gonna condition the project with these stipulations. I don't see a problem, but
I don't either.
Pat?
I just had a comment. I don't feel this process has been rushed. I think it has been delayed a couple of times, and I've been contacted by the Zoning Board of Appeals as to how we're doing on this. They're ready to take a look at this project, and I think they really do want to know whether conservation is comfortable with the project, so, I mean, I would say if we're feeling comfortable that stormwater's been addressed and we've closed, then, you know, a vote, if people are comfortable with it, would probably help the whole town hall move ahead with another review.
well, we'll get to the next review. That's another whole bailiwick, but.
Right. Right, if this is our first meeting, we were quickly going ahead, I'd say, gee, you know, there hasn't been any delays, anything unusual, but, you know.
Okay.
Okay.
So I guess I would take a motion to,
Let's close it first.
all right,
I make a motion to close.
a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So then a motion to accept this project with conditions to be written.
I make a motion that the Conservation Board is going to accept this project with orders in mitigation.
The mitigation that we've offered.
Yes, the mitigation that we have spoken about.
Yes.
Do I have a
Second.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
Now, do you do the same thing in both the stormwater also at the same time, subject to conditions? If you're being consistent.
Yeah, I would say stormwater, I think. would
Problem
be
with having a
enough-
lawyer in the room.
Yeah, right.
So my wife tells me.
You know, a lot of the stormwater conditions are gonna be covered by the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan and the order of the O&M plan that they've submitted. So I think it's just an up or down vote to issue the stormwater permit.
Motion?
I make a motion stating that we're accepting the stormwater?
With the, all of Merrill's.
Yes, with all Merrill's comments.
Stipulations, yeah.
Stipulations
Yeah.
in the maintenance.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Just all the ones that we've done so far, this one hurt. It just, because, I mean, we're talking about thousands and thousands of feet, literally inside the 50 and 100, and then somebody's gonna come up tonight and say, you know, I wanna do 5 feet in the, you know?
Still right.
No, it is tough. It's such a beautiful spot. It's absolutely beautiful. But
But,
the
I mean, if
reality
you-
is, I mean, the disturbance there is,
30 times 20 in just the turnaround, that's 600 feet, then the whole driveway, and then the septic system.
they're gonna have some work getting in there, but I guess my point is that someone.
The driveway's in
was really
the,
aggressive
yeah, the bottom part of
really
it
look
is.
at the whole lot
Yeah.
more developed.
Well, you've got up to here, is in the 50 foot.
So you're talking, and then the entire septic system
Why don't they just
Between the 50 and
is,
100.
rather than go
I think you're
through all
talking,
this?
1,000 square
This-
feet.
Because
Make
it's
sure
more
it's
mar-
approved
it's
before
more
the-
marketable.
before the
argument
bill
was-
buys it.
Right.
Look at the
He
percentage.
wants to make sure.
Yeah,
they get
right,
it
right,
passed through,
yeah.
so-
So,
Do you think
so the
they're
poor
doing
bastard comes in with a little
$3,000
summer cottage, whoops.
The family would do that because they can sell the property for, I mean, their hope would be that
When
they'd
it's
sell it
approved
for a
to
lot
be
more
built,
money.
okay.
Well,
So what do you
I don't
think
really
about
care about that part,
Oh
but
my gosh, I don't know. Millions.
whatever.
Which is too bad, because when we talk about trying to buy open space, we'd like to be able to acquire something like that, but it's just so expensive per acre.
I guess the part I don't understand is, how do you take this narrow road and approve an 8-bedroom house?
Well, I think what you can't do, you don't have the right to, you don't have the right to not allow people to use their property. You can't keep people from their
But
property.
it's a right way that the family has to share.
Yeah, but they know that going in.
I get confused sometimes. I'm trying to do it.
That was my question.
Oh, no, I think that was a great idea, because if you hadn't said anything, then
Okay.
wouldn't have gotten it. I think it's a great idea.
Let me just toss it
We
up
have
there
to do
for
it,
you.
might as well
Yeah,
get
give it to
something
Carol. Pat, where are we at with,
Okay, Carol, what's the next one?
Oh, wait a minute.
Assessment 41 is on next time.
do we want to ratify the enforcement order for Walden Woods?
Yeah, Walden's next. It was at 7:45 now.
Okay, yep. There's an email that came in today from Pat Brennan, and it's the last email on this review plan for the dewatering. And the last plan, it directed it out toward the street drain. That was unacceptable, and so now there's a plan to dewater on site. So the enforcement order calls for an acceptable plan between the two engineers to dewater on site and keep it out of the neighborhood, and also $300 fine, which Jim Toomey found it. Under the wetland regulations, we have the ability to do a $50 fine, but if it's dumped into a stream, a moving water body, then it's a $300 max. So I think he recommended that, he spoke with the other property owner's attorney, and that's kind of what we've agreed to at this point.
Now, did we answer all of Kevin's concerns?
We've avoided it by not putting any storm.
I see. So
Those
it's
were all
gonna
good,
be- yeah.
those were all good
Yeah, good
points.
questions, yeah,
Right.
yeah, I see.
This
what you mean.
site is at such bad soils that it's really hard to do, so they were looking to get purified water and then get it off-site, but it really has to be done on-site, so that's what this calls for. So if we ratify this.
Pat, are we sure that that's the maximum fine that we can do, discharging into a brook that goes into the harbor?
Without going to court and doing a criminal filing on that. So Tricia spoke with Jim, and, I mean, I think the way they looked at it is first offense, 300. I mean, you can certainly do something else if you wanted to. Yeah, except for he stopped it that night, so the offense wasn't continuing, so.
Yeah, but how many days had it gone on?
I don't know, yeah, when the people noticed the stream changing colors, they called, so that probably was soon after when it happened.
I mean, I saw Cashman get fined $250,000 for discharging silt into the Herringbrook
Yeah.
Reservoir. I mean, not in the reservoir, into the Herringbrook Brook and going out into that estuary. I mean, this silt went right into Scituate Harbor.
Right, right. I mean, it's certainly don't have to endorse it. We can, bring Mr. Toomey back.
Well, we can endorse the plan without, I mean, the fine part is separate from the
Well, it's in there.
on-site plan, right? Or
Well, it's
they all go
actually in
together?
there.
Oh, all right.
The fee amount is.
$300.
That's all?
Yeah.
But, and the fine will be.
Assessed accordingly or something?
Assessed, and then Jim and the other attorney talk, so it's 3. It's 3 if we do it tonight, but if you choose not to, then we can look into what's another option.
What have they put on site or in place to not have this happen again? I mean, if you see a large site that they have to really de-water, they might have several separating tanks
Right.
that they can pump into so that that water settles and the silt settles out of it. I mean, they're talking about, this is an awful site, and if they have a lot of rain events, there's
Yeah.
no place for that water to go except off-site in one way or the other. If, especially, they don't want to contaminate the drain basins, so they're not pumping it into there. And so they're pumping it into a manhole that winds up in Scituate Brook.
Yeah, the on-site plan now is to put it into his own catch basin that's within the subdivision. That is gonna drain into the detention basin. The first time the water went in the detention basin, the outlet structure wasn't in place, so the water just shot out. So what this calls for in this memo is, it can be treated, cleaned a bit, put into the detention basin, and no pumping allowed during a rain event, because that would overwhelm the system. So, I mean, I'm just kind of going by what Pat Brennan thinks may work, but, I mean, it's one person's opinion as to how it would work.
Well, he's an engineer, and hopefully
Right.
he's got a good handle on that.
Yeah. And they still are gonna have some filtering of the water before it goes in the basin. The other part of that is the basin has to be cleaned out in April before, any type of funneling of water in that direction.
All right.
Has DPW given their approval to the on-site plan?
They're not even involved, it's private stormwater.
Oh,
stuff.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They run the lines from the street to the edge of the site.
And so it stops there if it stays on-site,
Right,
okay.
and any abutters, if there's any problems with them, then it comes back to us and to,
So there'll be no water directed into the storm drain
right.
or the town's infrastructure in this
Right.
case? Okay,
Right, anywhere near the brook.
okay.
Right. But, I mean, it's a good point. If there is siltation of a brook, what should be the penalty? And, if you want to go the criminal court route, that is an option. And, this was a suggestion by town council, so.
Well, certainly if it happens again, I'm not
Right,
gonna settle for a $300
Right.
fine.
right. I agree.
We can do it without the fine. Say,
Why can't
we're
you
okay
put
with
some
that.
money aside?
I think that we have to either accept this one and then move forward.
Yeah.
But we've given them clear notice that,
Next time, it's gonna hurt
Parents are
more.
going to court.
Yep.
They knew what they're doing.
Yeah, I think Jim was speaking based on some experience of going to court with these, too.
Right.
And I did have a conversation with him about how these things go. But I agree. A stern warning, next time, there's not gonna be a minimal fine.
okay. All right. I mean, I have to respect the attorneys looking at it as well. I mean, he knows what he's got for a battle if he wants to get more, and maybe he feels that's not
Right.
in town's best interest either at this point. Okay.
We can actually put that in there, too, in the enforcement order. Further offense will result in criminal complaints in the court hearings.
All right.
All right.
I think
If
it
that's
should
how
be
you
in there.
wanna
I
word
think
it.
it should be in there.
Yeah, we
Well,
can
'cause it
we
has
can
to
vote it.
stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just kept escalating every time it
Right.
rained. Either it was going into people's yard or this, and then the pumping, I mean,
Okay.
come on.
Okay.
So, a motion to accept the
Enforcement order,
the enforcement order?
or ratify it?
Ratifying.
With a stipulation that a recurrence
Yeah.
will be much more severely dealt with, or whatever you want to say.
Criminal complaint.
Criminal
yeah.
complaint, yeah.
So a further offense, and it,
Yeah, recurrent,
Yeah.
yeah.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. So we can sort of jump around. We've got it in the room,
Indian Trail.
Mr. Petroselli, 136 Indian Trail. You want to go to that one?
Yep.
Who else, Greg, what do you hear?
The guy.
13 Wheeler Ave.
Oh, okay.
So the neighbor couldn't make this one either, huh, Mr. Lewis?
Hi, I'm Lucio. I own Lucio Landscape. Well, facility, got a house being built, and Rick Grady did a plan that I used as a mark. I actually drew over his plan. It shows the grades, elevations, and so forth. He's got a situation where it's fairly steep right now. It goes down to the property line. Is it out there?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay. So it kind of jumps up more than 1/1. So I think there's three things that should be done.
Do it from this direction, just so that it.
You know, there are tripods.
There's tripods right up in the corner there.
But we don't have any backer.
Oh, no backer.
Because there may be a butters that couldn't make it, that we'd like to see the plan watch on TV.
How would you like us to hold it?
If you can stand over, say, stand over here, sort of, so we can see it, just kind of like the last easel, or maybe you didn't see that.
As long as he does the same thing in my house, I'm okay with that.
I brought Lou in to show you the planting plan, that was the reason for the meeting.
Sure.
All right, so there's a couple of things we want to do to alleviate any kind of potential for water and a runoff. And namely, cut that grade a little bit more so you can almost walk on it. So we've got about 20 feet from the property line to the level area where the grass would start. And that gives us the ability to grade off some of the lower area, about 8 or 9 feet at a distance, more of an incline, with a level area, and then a small little jump up to the level spot. So a cross-section of that would look like this.
Are there a couple extra copies? Okay, why don't we pop a couple up here, and then that would be helpful.
But this was the one area that we weren't happy with.
Yeah, but I thought he said, okay, I thought he said that everything's been addressed.
Great.
No. Oh, okay.
Most everything.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
So looking at this little sketch, schematic.
Get some of those too, Paul.
Instead of having the wall, the existing wall now, cut straight back up to the level, I'd like to pull some of the material away.
All right.
And then kind of level off the area. And then we can use boulders to kind of make more of a break in the soil erosion, and then plant it very heavily. So we'd have some trees, they're all native plants, native pines. We'd have some St. John's wort that would stay low, kind of travel on the soil. We'd have some bayberry, all listed. I've got it listed, and then we've got a key at the bottom of this. Key at the bottom.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
And the quantities. So basically, anywhere we can put a plant that's got soil, I think we should plant it. The other thing that would help would be a fiber mat that would use to go across the whole length of the hill. And that gets pinned into the hill, and then we cut an X and plant the shrub so it doesn't interfere with the fiber.
So that holds the soil, am I correct?
That'll hold the soil for months.
There's a fiber.
In the meantime, the plants, take over, they have a chance to really root.
So where is this?
Hold back that erosion.
Well, that's the, okay.
Where does this insert fit into,
That's just a cross-section of.
yeah, where does that go here?
This is the yard that's there now,
Yeah.
and then you're gonna take some of the boulders out here?
Well, what happened is, this here goes all the way out, and then it just drops.
Yeah, right.
So we're
That's
gonna grade
what we're
this
upset
to
about.
this elevation.
Oh, I see.
And plant it. And I'll also put fiber on there, that fiber mesh.
You're gonna grade it with what? Dirt?
The existing soil, I'll just pull out of there. This will
So
get
it-
pulled out,
Okay.
so you get more of an angle. And
All
then we'll
right.
slope it, kind of level it, and
You're
then
not
slope
gonna
it
put
again.
any more rocks in there, that's what I'm asking you.
No more rocks?
No more rocks.
I'm actually losing about 5 feet of my yard, right?
Yeah, we're taking away about 5 feet.
That's how we're gonna make it.
So it
less
doesn't
of a
go
slope.
as dramatically
Yeah.
towards that end?
It's just too steep.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That-
That's what we
That was
we
your
were
biggest-
afraid of.
biggest issue, so
Yeah.
that's why we came back
The
with that.
steepness,
Yeah, I
that
agree.
stuff isn't gonna grow.
So it's gonna look really nice when the
Okay,
rain
yeah.
Paul wants to see it. As you come around the corner,
Well,
this here will be all
Nick's
planted.
friends with his neighbor, he'll go down in his yard and look
Um,
back at his pretty yard.
There you go.
Don't, Frank. We already had a
Right,
guy
much better.
do the stormwater thing, we're all right with that piece, this is the
Well, I
only
think what,
piece left,
I think
right?
what happened, we had, Pat Brennan reviewed this, right?
Yes.
So,
I think that was his name. I know someone reviewed it. yes.
Hey, Pat,
Pat did.
so we had Pat Brennan review the stormwater piece, and we got that part settled, right?
Pat was happy with that, then the planting plan was next, and as long as whatever planting doesn't change things, you know, on the elevation or the direction of flow and the swales and all that kind of stuff, I think it's.
Okay.
you know,
so is
I
the,
didn't bring Grady back because it was pretty much agreed.
is the, stone trench getting moved, Lou? Is that, did that move from,
I don't think it can be moved. I think to get it around that ledge, it's got to go roughly where it is.
okay, so that's where Grady drew that and.
He did that, yeah.
Okay.
We'll try to disguise it somewhat, but it'll look like a crushed stone river flowing through there. Then you have the level grass, which will absorb a lot of that, any runoff. And then from that point on, you get the double effect, that double swale, rather than just a straight shot.
So it's gonna be stepped a little bit.
Yeah.
Lou, what's the slope now at this edge here, from the property line up to the?
Oh, the existing?
Yeah, yeah. It's
It looks so big, but really, this is only 10 feet.
Yeah, it comes up pretty
This
quick.
is 5
Yep,
feet.
okay.
This
Yeah, I
is
think that was the main.
Better.
10.
Agitated unless
Yeah.
the slope.
Yep.
This is
So
like
we do have to lose 5, 6
whole
feet of yard. level
Distance is
yard.
only 20 feet.
And that's from here?
From this property line in.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Do you have a copy of this here?
Oh.
This is-
Yep, we're,
Yeah, the fiber, yeah. So, I mean, the plants we use are all native, they're also aesthetic, they look nice, they flower, some of them. Some are low, they're gonna hug the ground, and others are gonna be a little taller, to give a little privacy. And we did the rain garden, we did very similar to Falcone's, we used perennials and some grasses, native grasses. just to decorate.
Falcone is, Border Street.
Right, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been over there.
You know, the perennials do well there, it's all wet, hopefully. And it kind of camouflages the area so that it's not an attractive nuisance for somebody. But that should do the job, and I just want to make sure that it was okay by the board.
When do you start?
As soon as the ground thaws.
June.
Late April.
No, don't say that. I
Late
gotta
April is
get out
right.
my
I hope you're
yard.
right. I hope you're right. Late April,
Oh.
early May.
Would it be, not to torture you with this, but I wonder if we should we give this back to Pat for any reason? I mean, would he get any piece of this that's gonna, it's a little different contour. The gist of this drain at the top of the hill was what was gonna solve this in both the engineers' minds. Was gonna, so that we don't have more water running over the edge. So really, all they're doing in this plan is changing the slope.
Yeah, it might be like suspenders of a belt. You know, the swale probably would do it, but who knows how much water's gonna really hit that drain.
Right, so this is an improvement above that.
In addition to, yep.
Yeah, I think he thought he couldn't do much about the slope, so he designed the swale that way, and I think this gives you the benefit of a change in the contours.
Yeah, well, we've lost the
Yeah.
45 degrees, like
Yeah.
you said. We're not gonna deal with that anymore.
You'll almost have a terrace effect where you can water.
Exactly.
You know, in order to get to this, you're gonna be removing quite a bit of blasted material and earth at the same time.
There's a lot of fill covering everything, so
There's a lot of blasted material under it.
under it buried.
We're
We
aware-
actually
we're
hope
aware
to
of
use that for the rain garden in the front, to kind of landscape, you know, around the swale,
Mhm.
some of that blasted stone.
Okay.
We are gonna have to pull some out though.
Yep.
And remove it.
And you have to make sure that all the erosion controls down the bottom. When you're doing
Yeah.
this, it's
Stay in
gonna,
place.
and if we get a big rain, we don't want anything else going into
Silt sock or something.
Henry's, yard.
Yeah,
Okay, we wanna make sure we keep everything
good point.
where it needs to be, because, yeah, you never know. We could get one heck of a rain when you're in the middle of pulling this apart
Right.
to make it, to correct it.
Yeah, well, before we start, we'll put
Yeah.
a nice barrier there.
Yeah. Will we write up some orders for this? Yeah. Just stating
Yeah,
it
there
has to
was-
be exactly what we've seen.
Right, there was an amended order, and then we, filed a violation letter. We can add this into it. We have all of Pat's, Pat's report,
In,
and then Darren and Rick's.
before he'd get a CSC, we would want a few growing seasons, wouldn't we? To make sure that everything has held together.
Yep.
How long would it take to get that established, Lou, do you think?
I mean, once it's planted.
Yeah.
One full season.
I think you'd know pretty much.
Yeah. No, I think so. I just.
Okay.
I'm very happy.
Oh, thank you, Penny.
This is good.
You
Wow.
want me to be
Wow.
happy.
Penny?
I'm very happy.
I think he wants
Bill?
a motion.
I'm good.
Richard?
I'm good. I would want to see the conditions reflect a little more than one season, so that next summer, or the end of next summer, we know that it's held up well. But other than that, I'm fine. This is really much better.
Lisa?
I'm good.
Pat?
Yeah, I think they did what they were asked.
Anybody else with any? Okay. All right, motion to accept this along with Amory's and Grady's plans for the drain.
Come on,
Help me, help
motion
me.
woman. Make a motion that we accept
Except the planting plan.
specifically as it is, and the,
The regrading of the slope.
Well, that's the plan.
Yeah.
But the Grady, what was that?
Plan with the drain, with the crushed stone trench.
The drainage swale at the top of the.
Right.
yeah, all of the recommendations that
Or do
our
we have a plan?
consultant
I
made.
believe we have a plan
Yeah,
that
we
shows
do.
all that. So in addition to that plan will be this plan.
Yeah, with photos and everything.
Okay.
And we will request 2 growing seasons.
2 growing
seasons.
As part of the OC,
Conditions.
yeah,
This one?
yeah,
Yep.
okay.
2 growing seasons. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
That's what I had with it.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Thank you. See, we actually
Very
can
much.
agree.
I got,
Just a couple.
At least one we need for the file.
Why don't we keep a couple?
Oh, he wants 2. All right, let him keep those.
Yeah. I got this, this.
you want this? Yeah.
If we can hang on to 2 and then you'll,
I'm gonna come down and check on it. You know
Oh,
I-
we'll all be down.
Oh, it's gonna be nice.
what do you want to do?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna keep 2. I don't know, Quincy, do you have 1 or 2 here?
I have 1. She has
Okay,
1.
and then-
You keep those 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have a little bit.
Well, you're gonna want to keep a set of these plans so you can go get some prices on that landscaping, aren't you?
Wait for the first truckload of plants.
When are they coming in?
You know, last year, they came
Wholesale.
in today,
Yeah.
we got a snowstorm the next day. 2 feet of snow.
Did we last year?
Yeah, all the winter was late last year.
This has just been constant this year.
It's been much colder.
Who's keeping this one?
What's that?
No, I just threw it away.
What's that?
Who's keeping this?
Here, we'll give it back to him.
Okay.
Thank you again. You want one?
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yeah, right.
Should I keep this or no?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We'll make sure they got a copy. Well, actually, we'll give it to Pat. You can decide.
Unfortunately, you can't have them start over.
No.
Okay. you want to do some of the orders, and then we can discuss the update CPC and the Stockbridge Landing and
Yeah,
stuff?
we could do 13-wheeler if we install
Okay.
them.
What are the conditions for 13-wheeler? What's up?
I don't know, did everybody read them?
Yeah.
Bill, did you read them?
You saw me reading them,
I saw
yes.
you reading them. You make a motion, 'cause see what happens.
Making a motion?
Not me.
I make a motion to accept the order of conditions on Wheeler Road as written.
Is there anything you want to add to it, Penny?
No, I'm gonna abstain.
Okay. Richard?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm
One abstention?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I know.
Argue the,
Um,
I thought you said they were gonna argue the.
Yeah, well, that's what he told me. No.
So we got, yeah, all right.
you want to just keep going on orders?
Yeah,
So you all right with it?
That's fine.
Okay.
I make a motion that we accept the orders for South River Partners as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I make a motion for 244 Central Ave, that we accept those orders as written.
Did you understand that? I saw your email on the tight tanks. Did Lisa, at some point, you sent something about it? Did you, or am I?
It wasn't 244, it was
Oh.
something.
My question was, an elevated tank of 500 gallons versus a septic tank of 2,000. When I thought, I was under the impression that we weren't supposed to increase the size of a septic. And the field card is 3 bedrooms, and the plan for the septic is 4 bedrooms.
Would that be a Board of Health issue?
So is there a 500-gallon elevated tank there now, or was the
Yes.
tank in the ground?
500 gallon elevated, no.
So it went from 500 to 2,000.
So that 500-gallon was a separating, or acting as a septic tank for this leaching field?
Oh, this one's a tight tank, I thought.
Yes.
The new one, the new one.
That's
But
why
what I
we
think
did
what
it.
you're saying, what Lisa's saying, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, is on that house right now is a 500-gallon elevated septic tank.
Correct.
Yes,
Am I right?
With leach field.
With a
Is it yours?
leaching field.
with a leaching field, that
Mhm.
makes a difference,
Yep.
doesn't it?
With a leaching field.
Yeah.
Right.
Now what they want to do is have a 2,000-gallon concrete tank in the ground as a tight tank.
That has to be pumped, so that's why it would be
For
bigger.
4
now.
bedrooms.
So they need a larger capacity. So you're saying they've changed the bedroom count as well?
Yeah, the field card reflected 3 bedroom. The tight tank plans reflected 4 bedroom.
Who was the engineer?
Was it Spat?
Phil
Yep.
Spath? Huh.
Phil. Last-
Yeah, they went through Board of Health and got approval under Title V, so we kind of leave that to them.
Yeah.
And,
Is that 2,000?
but there are some things about this site that, I mean, there's a couple sites down there that have replaced their leaching field 2 or 3 times in the last few years, so at some point, we say, well, Title V isn't
Better?
working for us in
Yeah.
every case. Yeah. So,
Well,
I
wouldn't
can
a tight
understand
tank be
the
better?
difference.
I would, it's seasonal, and they're gonna be pumping it out.
Yeah, I would say it's not increasing the size of the septic system. I mean, because you're going from treating it to having it hauled away, and in fact, in some cases, the argument would be made, Lisa, I think that it's a better scenario, because you're not inducing gray water or anything into the beach at this time. What you're doing is actually
agree.
taking it away.
Mhm.
So personally, I think that it's probably environmentally better. I don't know.
But people have been declined to increase from 3 bedroom to 4 bedroom. And are we opening up a can of worms? Because people,
I think the
Before
bedroom
having-
size is the Board of Health's issue, though.
Right.
I can grasp the size difference because it is a tight tank and it has to be pumped. So you're not gonna have a 500-gallon tank because that'd be
You'd be
pumped
pumping it
every
every
other
other
day.
week, right.
Where you have to have the capacity to hold some and then have it pumped. And so, but I don't, the bedrooms, I just feel as though that's Board of Health down the road.
Somebody must have submitted a plan. I mean, I can't believe they could change the size of the,
No, I can't either.
they're not gonna let them, they're not gonna let them add more bedrooms on a tight tank.
I wouldn't.
Well, I was told, I was informed that you couldn't have more than 3-bedroom septic on Humrock.
I don't know about that. Steve?
If I could just comment, they can actually put in a larger tank with a greater capacity. It could have a capacity for a 4-bedroom, but once they go to a tight tank, there's probably a deed restriction at the Board of Health that the home has to stay a 3-bedroom. But there's no regulation that I know of that says you can only have a 3-bedroom in Humrock.
I don't know anything
So I mean,
about that.
somebody could, if they meet the regulations, they could have a 4 or 5-bedroom system in Humrock. But as far as an upgrade is concerned, correct me if I'm wrong, even though you design a system for a larger capacity, doesn't give you the right to add more bedrooms. And Penny's right. What they're doing is putting in a bigger tank so they only have to pump it maybe every 3 weeks instead of every other week.
So from an environmental point of view, I mean, we have something that's buried and sealed, so theoretically, this would be an improvement from an environmental.
At one
impact
point, DEP was frowning on tight tanks in those areas, but they seem to have realized that it's the only thing that's gonna really work because the septic systems keep watching out.
Yeah, unless you put it
So I
up
think
like a
that
water
there's been
tank.
some changes
It's exposed.
from, in DEP's attitude on how to deal with this.
Yeah.
I don't believe we're changing we don't have the authority to change a bedroom count. All we're trying to do is allow them to put a tank of a certain size in the ground. And I think we have the authority to do that. And we've done it in multiple locations at this point.
I mean, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a meeting with, you know, a new health agent who comes in saying, you know, our concerns about these all getting washed out in the Glades and in Humrock, we may want to be pushing for more tight tanks in areas, or we may be, you know, looking for better treatment systems in other parts of the town. I mean, I think we should be meeting with them. They make the call on Title V.
Well, with a septic tank, when it's full, what happens?
With a septic
It's
tank?
gotta
It goes to the
maintain.
leaching field. It
Yeah.
doesn't.
You pump it.
Okay, so with a tight tank, if it gets full and it doesn't get pumped, what happens?
You got a
Oh, they're in
problem.
big trouble. Something's going back in the house.
Yeah.
Back
The
side.
toilets
It'll
don't
back
flush.
within the house?
Yeah.
Goes in.
Oh, yeah. It has no outlet. A septic has an outlet into the leaching. This has nowhere to go except in the house. You don't pump it.
Yeah, I think we're,
There's an alarm that's set
Yikes.
on it that leaves you capacity for a certain amount of days.
Yep.
So that once the alarm goes off, you still can use it and you've got time to have it pumped. So it's not an immediate thing when the alarm goes off, all of a sudden you can't flush the toilet.
So this would then be the best way to do it if it can't leach in anything.
Exactly.
From a conservation
Every-
standpoint,
Everything should be done that way.
from a conservation standpoint.
it is a little contradictory because it's, DEP won't allow homes on a barrier beach to be connected to sewerage. But now they're gonna allow them to be on a tight tank that's gonna be pumped, it's gonna be trucked to the sewer treatment plant as opposed to be, so.
But that's illogical.
Yeah,
A
well,
lot of things are like.
well, we don't have
We have
time
enough
to.
to deal
Yeah.
with.
Rosemary?
I hope you're not suggesting that all of Humrock falls into this category.
It doesn't.
It certainly doesn't.
No, no.
What category?
I don't know.
It doesn't.
I hope not, too.
There
Yeah. No, there's an area down,
one
right,
small area.
yeah, that where they're getting washed out, down in the 240s, 230s, right? Right.
All right.
Most of Humrock's pretty good, actually.
Yep.
So can we go back to I make a motion to accept the orders as
It's already
written?
been seconded.
Oh,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Good.
Thank you, sir. I'm ready for bed.
Update from CPC. So, last night, with the Board of Selectmen, that actually, the advisory board last week with the CPC article is for the Damon Preserve, 40 acres. And we took that before the advisory committee a week ago, and then we were before the selectmen last night. And the only question that came up was the question of whether or not some of this property had the potential to be used for ball fields. In the particular case of the Damon property, the Damon family would like that property to remain wooded and not be developed.
Could I just ask you a question? After I talked to you this morning, I started thinking, why didn't the rec department's liaison to CPC? If they were interested, I would have thought when the project was presented that their liaison, I started
We never heard
saying,
anything from rec about that one.
yeah, no, but when you have your meetings
Mhm.
and the project was presented, if I was from rec, I would have said, hey, can we have a little bit of that? But obviously they didn't.
Right. No, this was a thought, I mean, in the scheme of everything being moved around, town hall and all that stuff, there's a
Yeah.
concern whether there's space for ball fields.
Right.
And so it was one or two of the selectmen that thought, well, maybe this is a potential area for ball fields. But in this particular case,
If it isn't,
the
it
people
isn't.
that are selling the property and they're selling it at a substantially reduced
Sure.
price would like it to remain wooded. Now, I mean, if at town meeting people decide, well, we don't want it because we don't have the flexibility, then that could be an issue. Hopefully, it's not. My couple of things, the Damon family wishes, and then I'm gonna look a little bit further at what's core habitat, but I'm almost positive that wooded area right adjacent to the South Swamp is core habitat and is better left undisturbed if possible. So I don't think there's a lot of issue
I
there.
think it was just, a thought being thrown out.
Whatever.
It is what it is,
But it is gonna be a concern, and we need to think about that as they start to move things around and the need for more fields, they are gonna consider some of the Ellis property, which is not encumbered by the commission.
There's 20 acres there, yeah. I think they did they do perk tests there a few weeks ago?
They did, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
No, I hear you, it's,
okay. The Stockbridge Landing appeal to DEP?
Hey, they're coming out to do the site visit with the DEP water person, and the attorney for the property owner was trying to get this dismissed, but at this point, it hasn't been. So I think we're gonna do the walkthrough on Thursday.
Tomorrow, right?
Yeah, at this point, it's not open invitation. It's, the attorney is kind of controlling things. I did send an email today just to say, I said, Frank's been involved in this property for years, he knows, he knows where the stormwater basin issues are and all of that, and so I asked that he be allowed to come. I haven't heard back, I'll check again. But this is the first step. There could be 3 steps before the final decision. There's an informal hearing, then there's a meeting at DEP, and then there's a adjudicatory hearing. In the meantime, the DEP water person may say this is a Zone A, and, that's what it is. And or he may say, nope, the decision stands under the 40B, and they can go ahead with their project, so.
okay. We might not be invited tomorrow, but there's no reason that in the next week that you couldn't take us on a
Sure,
field trip.
right. Oh, yeah.
Just so the rest of the board sees the site
Yep.
that's out there, no matter what the decision is.
Right, we have an open order, we can go out there. It's
Yeah,
just
which we do.
I think the comments to the water person from DEP is what they're trying to hold back on.
Well,
So.
that's all fine and dandy.
And we'll
You
make
know,
them.
'cause
Yeah.
Can we, can the commission make those? In other words, you go out to that
Oh, sure.
meeting tomorrow.
Yeah.
We could have a discussion, and then, why don't you give us an update on what was done? Then why don't you think about what you want to do to comment on that, and then we can forward that to DEP.
And in DEP, the meeting on the 11th or the 12th, that's open to whoever wants to go. That's going to be in Lakeville.
Oh, that meeting?
Yeah, that is with, I the appeal person from DEP, Carol's friend, I forget his name, but anyways, we have that meeting scheduled for the 11th or the 12th, and that's fine. And we're hoping that we have the DEP.
But that's for 305.
No, that's, 305 backed it up till the 18th.
Oh, that's right, I put that, yeah.
I believe this one's on the 11th.
You were gonna try to knock out 2 tomorrow, but you're not gonna be able to do that?
Yeah, no, I can do that, but we
Oh, yeah.
can't have the 2 hearings. The 2 hearings are gonna be in the 11th, and they're not now, so.
Okay.
And I guess a lot of times these get settled in Lakeville, they don't go through the whole final phase of the adjudicatory hearing, which would be great, but we'll see. So the other one on that, the old Oak and Bucket one, is tomorrow, and that's related to the slots of wood that have been put back in. Flashboards to direct the water away from the
And
reservoir.
who's going to that?
That's the same DEP person, and Neil, let me think, no, Laura and myself, and one property owner, Mr. Mooney. So we're going out there on that.
Okay.
And it may be that there's more engineering needed, that the flashboards won't do the trick. There may need to be something else in place. I don't know what he's gonna say.
Okay.
And then the 305 hearing, that is, there's an informal on the 10th. It's a phone, it's a
Conference call.
on the 10th. So I haven't responded yet, but whoever wants to be involved in that. And I think because the appeal is against DEP, they're the ones who decide who gets to speak. But we're invited to speak as a town, so.
Okay.
Beating that one up enough.
I know.
What's the thing for signage, Pat?
There was a request that if we're considering signs, that we also include some signs about not feeding the ducks and the geese because they're gathering along the driftway and along Musquashkett, and they're causing a nuisance problem. So if we could be putting up signs, we could include that and why they shouldn't be
I don't
fed.
think you're ever gonna stop people from feeding critters that come up.
It's a request, and I said I would bring it to the commission.
By whom?
Okay.
You
We need
did.
to get some money for that first.
I know where we can get money.
No, yeah.
Okay.
Not my
Okay.
pocketbook.
228 Central Ave, what was?
Yeah, I still owe a letter to this guy. This was the wall down on Central.
You know, he's not the only one. See, this is my problem with that. I was down Surfside. There's 2 houses did the same thing. And I know we had kind of made a semi-policy, it isn't in black and white. But after we had a couple of big storms, that you could do that, but it's got to be 15 feet off your property line. So you're not directing or causing water to go to your neighbors, which Mother Nature intended for your yard. And there's 3 on Surfside Road now that have done that.
Yeah,
It's like, I mean, I think it's a problem. It can create a problem.
I looked into it a little bit, and some of the things they're trying to prevent are the cobble from being all over the yard, because the water's gonna go all over the place anyway. But if you use the 2x2 posts and sink them into the ground, that would allow the water to come through, but the cobble would be contained, so there wasn't as much, raking of the cobble off your driveway and your lawn. So it might be a
So you're sending the
compromise.
cobble to Joe next door.
Well,
I mean,
the
that's what
cobble.
happened down, and, when we did this a few years ago, Frank, when Jim was here, we talked to DEP about it, and they said they can do it, but they've gotta be 10 to 15 feet off the property line. Because if you're on the property line, you are stopping what Mother Nature wants you to have, and you're sending it to
So they allowed that?
If it was off the property
Really?
line.
That would be great to find that.
That's, I'm not an expert on it, that's what I was told. This was a few years back.
Off whose
when we
pro-
had
I don't
all
get
the
that.
Trouble down on Surfside.
Yeah, we would.
Off their own property line?
Off their property line.
Inside their property.
Inside their property line.
Oh.
So,
Right.
some stuff.
I'm like,
No,
okay.
well, that's it. You
I get
can't-
you.
Where these are right on the property line,
They have to
like-
be inside 10 to 15 site.
Yeah.
If they allowed it, that would be fine. We could get that out as information we provide.
Well,
That'd be
but
great.
the thing is, down on Hummerock, that guy that did it on Central Ave, there's no way to come off 10 feet off his
Right.
property line.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying, these people, they
Right.
can't do it.
Right, my letter to him is gonna be that you have to file. You know, you've done something, you're doing an after-the-fact filing, then we can debate it and we can be on record as, you know, making some decisions as to what can happen.
Because, just because the neighbor next door is living somewhere else for the winter, doesn't mean all this stuff should be going in his yard,
Right, right,
you know?
yeah.
I'm not, you know, and I don't have the solution, but you're gonna get floods down there, and you can't.
You can't impact your neighbor
No, you
when you're trying
cannot
to protect
impact
your
your
own
neighbor,
house,
protect
right?
your
Yeah,
own
right.
home.
you just never
I'm
have a
sorry,
computer,
it's
so I
not
just-
fair.
I'd love to find out which file that's in that DEP said you
Just
could
hard
do
to
something
tell
within your own
I think it was a
property.
conversation,
Okay.
You know, it's such a small map.
okay? Because I remember Jim, because we had the ones on all that mess on Surfside Ave with the boards, and then up the street, they had the, plastic Jersey barriers
Yeah,
full of
right.
water.
I saw those.
Well, there's three now down there.
Okay.
In the positive,
And I'm like, oh, hallelujah.
natural resources.
Okay.
The information, and I'm not saying it goes to.
Where are we now?
So I don't know.
Okay. We had a few other issues, so minor activities, Pat and I were in front of the selectmen, we talked to them about that. They didn't, I don't think they had a real issue with it, they thought it was a pretty good idea. They won't let us necessarily keep the funds. The money that comes from minor activities has to go back to the general fund. But,
Really?
yeah,
But they left it out
But
as to maybe
if
helping
we-
the budget out the following year.
right, so we,
Help with the budget?
Help our own conservation
We were
budget.
trying to build something up so we could, I thought they were saying it sounded good to help with the trails.
but the problem is, there was a town accountant who was, said that the way that those monies come back, they
Right,
can't come back to us specifically.
Right. They didn't think it was a bad use for it. You're right. They agreed
So-
with the use.
I think the thing to do would be to see what we generate and then ask them
Right.
to give us money,
For trail
for
work.
trails and trail maintenance. And that's what we explained, and they understood it.
Oh,
but
okay.
It's a
Good.
procedural
Lost it.
thing that
They had
can't,
some good points about consistency too. We really need to list the circumstances when we're gonna do it, and, you know, they wanna be sure that they're giving the okay to something they understand.
so I'm wondering, you think we've might have issued 30 or 40 minor activities permits?
Yeah, I'd say 30 last year.
If we made a list of those, just a rough list, so we could look at what they were,
Yeah,
and then, the way I'm thinking about it is that we have bylaws that are more stringent than the state. So those, if they're in the Wetlands Protection Act, it's either gonna be an RDA or a notice of intent.
Right.
But when we go into areas where we have jurisdiction, perhaps we could do a minor activities,
yeah, but even getting back to what you said, even if it's in the DEP jurisdiction under the Wetland Protection Act, there's wording in there, if something is gonna be done that can't possibly hurt a resource area, we have the jurisdiction to say, or the authority to say, it's not gonna do any harm, we're not gonna make it
Okay.
file. It's trickier because it's someone else's law, but I mean, a sonotube on a backyard in a grass area, you know.
so they don't wanna leave it to just Pat's discretion. They like
Right.
to have some guidelines.
Right.
That's what I heard you say that, the sonotubes and stuff. And then I started thinking today, well, one sonotube that is hand dug, that's one thing. But somebody doing 3 or 4, bringing a piece of equipment in.
Right, exactly.
And that's what
Each
Pat
one
said.
is.
Yeah, no, but
we gotta have little
I just-
guidelines.
Yeah.
I think we can get in a gray area where we might have people doing stuff we really don't want them doing.
And we know the types that would do those.
None of them are in this
Yeah,
room.
no. But Penny, the other thing on that, this year, there's been some that are real quick decisions. I go out there, oh yeah, go do it. There are others I said, I've brought back to you and said, well, what do you think about this? Because there are some, even a, you know, a little backhoe could
I
do
just get
damage.
nervous.
Yeah,
I mean, there's lots of things, a tree falling down,
Right.
leaning towards my house,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Of course.
right.
You know, we don't need to file for
Right.
that, but
8:45.
I'm sorry. What, do you have a hot date?
Run
I was here
television.
till 10:30 or 11 o'clock last
You
night.
were
I-
here later, dear.
Try
I
not to
watched you. All right, I think, wait
do a
wait a minute,
repeat
what else do we
performance.
have? 19th Circuit Ave, Pat?
19th Circuit, they had come in for a request for a certificate of compliance, and this is the one we thought that a wall was put in instead of plantings. We know
Yes.
plantings had come in and then they were taken out. Paul sent a bunch of photos. We have, I don't know if you guys have all this. We may just have it here. And they're
Are you
looking.
happy with it or not?
Well, they've left money so that the plantings can be done, more than enough for money for the plantings to be done. You know, we should probably touch briefly about, you know, the new homeowners have to agree to that, we have to be able to get out there, it's gonna be Brad Holmes doing the planting, is that?
Oh, you don't have the money yet, or you do have
No,
the
we
money?
do, we have the
Oh.
money.
You have a check up there for $5,000.
Okay.
For 30 small plants.
Yeah.
You know, which is.
It's a lot of money.
more than what you need, but Frank said not to be stingy,
These
so
are small
Yeah.
plants.
make sure we work.
Well, I don't want little tiny teacup plants. I mean, I just think.
5,000
$5,000, they can be a little bigger.
No, well, that's what I'm saying, so it should be.
I'd like a motion
So
to,
with this-
Yes.
Okay,
I'll
just
accept
one
it.
sec.
Do this.
This is the original plan that you approved back in '98, and what we show here in the back here is a stone wall. I mentioned that there was a new wall, there
Right.
isn't. That stone wall is there, and we went out, we did an as-built. And this also shows the hay bale line on the street side where
Where that wall was, I went out there and I couldn't find it, so now I'm glad to see, what?
It's there, well, when I looked at it, it was covered with snow. So I took photographs of these are aerial photographs. This is the property before the house was torn down, and you can see the wall in here. This is Dr. Peterson's house over here, Frank. He's got a wall, but it's going down for height. This is from '95, March of '95, and then in 2008, you can see the new house here. And you can see the wall here. It goes right along here. Here's Peterson wall. Peterson's wall comes down to here. And you can just make out the plantings. This is 2010. Well, you can see the plantings there. You can see the wall. There's a riprap. Here's Peterson's wall. And then this is 2010. Next one, the plantings are gone. I got, this is 2013. Actually, the plants, looks like the plants are here, but they aren't there.
right.
I got a call from Janet Kelch. I spoke to the owner. She talked to me about the wall, and when we went to the archives, I got this plan out, Frank. What this plan shows is that the hay bale line at the original approval was up uphill the wall. So we never touched the wall.
Right.
This is an as-built plan that we did last week. It shows the riprap, the wall, the elevations of the wall are consistent with these contours.
Yep.
And this is the rear yard, which is pretty flat. It only varies by a foot from here to here. So the plants have to go along here.
Yep.
There's supposed to be 2 rows staggered. Fred puts them 8 feet apart. There's a total of 30, and once you approve this, he's gonna order them and put them in as soon as he can. And the money would stay in the account until we take hold, so. And I also had him prepare a letter explaining what he's gonna do and how and when. That's it.
Sounds good. Motion?
I don't think we need a motion, it's just a.
CSC, so, okay,
CSC.
good.
It's
Thank you, Paul.
good.
You're welcome.
Do it.
What else?
Cobb Lane.
Cobb Lane.
What do they need?
We added that onto the agenda. Yeah.
That's a specific dimension, it's 14 by 21. What I showed you was a sketch, 8.5 by 11, by Charlie Sparrow, a neighbor.
Okay.
Back in 2000, 2002, and just displayed the wetlands in the
Yes, sir.
backyard.
Just go with it too.
They were trying to sell the estate, the mother
No, that's
died,
the
so-
enforcement order.
So what do they need? Are they all set? Or
They're all
No.
set now.
No.
We got the stuff in today. So I set the
You
agenda
just need a
before.
certificate of compliance.
Oh, okay.
So they can
Okay.
close out.
It's been built for 10 years, hasn't it?
Pardon?
The addition that's there has been 10 years it was built?
Yeah, but nobody thinks the CSC until they go to sell usually.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
And then it's Panic City. So we're all set
So we're
there.
good on that one.
We're good.
Okay,
We're good, Frank.
great, thanks, Paul.
I make a motion to
We don't.
adjourn. Unless you want to say something else, Frank.
What was the MACC Pat was gonna speak to?
Oh,
MACC, Mac thing? You said something about a,
Bill.
Well, no, we don't, it's getting late, so we'll give you a summary later. Lisa and I went. It was a terrific experience, very educational. One of the really interesting things is that DEP is going to create a abbreviated process for the rebuilding and repair of bridges, dam removals. They've come up with a streamlined process, and docks. They've come up with a new.
Small docks.
Yeah, small docks,
Yeah.
small private docks.
Yeah.
This is gonna require some talking amongst the different boards, because this could be a very interesting ruling that they've come down with. And then,
D on it.
you know, the priority and estimated habitat thing, the Bio2 map, it's just that, I don't know how updated that one is, but it's gonna make it fairly easy for us, that anything that's within these two
That would
is
be
automatically gonna trigger a natural heritage review.
Natural Heritage will have it on record, then, so if,
Yeah, I think this one's pretty old. That's been out there.
yeah.
So we'll take a look at it. I don't know how we go about going through
I thought it
the,
was 2010, but it might be.
well, the latest survey is 2008, so if that's 2010, then we're
Oh,
good.
that's it.
Okay, great, thank you, I appreciate you going.
Oh, it was
too.
terrific. It was a well
It was
worthwhile
great.
experience.
Really.
They had some heavy
Had some
duty people.
impressive
They
speakers.
had the head of DEP
lunches.
there, they had the head of Fish and Wildlife there, they had some heavy duty hitters there.
Wow,
Yeah, very good.
nice.
The other thing, and we can take this offline, but I was watching the planning board meeting last night, were you there? And they were talking about something about the conservation board requiring a certified letter to go out, and planning board said they were confused about it in terms of how that got in there and what the language was. and
We
stuff.
could do registered, I mean, it doesn't have to be a certified letter. I
Oh,
mean, when
I
they're notifying
saw the same
abutters,
thing you were talking about.
Yeah,
She was supposed to come and talk to you. It was, everyone was very confused.
but they were definitely throwing it back on.
is it
I'll
about a
take that.
butter notification?
It was a meeting in the past month, okay? I saw it too last week.
I'll-
And they would, yeah,
I'll talk to Laura about it, find out what the problem is,
Yeah.
and then,
Okay,
because the planning board said it was us, and I don't think it is.
And they were so confused.
maybe it was something Steve was doing.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe he
What's,
confused them.
what about, the road at Cushing, the Cushing Monument off of Neilgate Street?
You can
Oh,
talk
you
about that.
started the meeting with a
Quick.
Yeah.
30 seconds.
He wants us to
Really
write a letter,
fast.
that's all. we need
No
to
good
know.
deed goes unpunished, just so that you know,
Quick,
which is why I'm back again.
29.
And I'm not sure who's familiar with the road or not,
saw
but there is the Judge Cushing Park where the tomb is, up off of Neilgate Street. Cushing Park Road goes up, we put a new water main up there a number of years ago, my partner Mark Winchester and I, when we did a couple of houses up there. And we put some money in escrow to do a top coat of pavement over where we put the water main in. And I've been dealing with Steve Gammon at Wampatuck State Park, who's a great guy. And we've been putting as much pressure as we can on the state to go in there and actually redo the
It's a
entire
state
road.
park.
It's the smallest state park.
Yeah, in the
It's about
state.
5 acres.
When I used to
It's the
live on
smallest
Neilgate
state
Street,
park.
people would show up with a camper thinking they could camp. Where do I go?
If they stuff it in the woods, they might be able to.
Yeah.
And they actually may possibly be expanding the size of that park by 7 acres in the future. There's evidently another piece up there that they might be able to get.
Where?
Which is upland, I believe. But the purpose of this anyways is that the state had just released a whole bunch of money, evidently, for infrastructure, millions of dollars. And I think we hit them this time possibly at the right time. And I met out there with one of the construction people that does work for the state, and Steve Gammon, excuse me, and they're looking at pulverizing the entire length of the road, the pavement that's on it now, because it's in really deplorable
Bad
shape.
shape.
They haven't touched it since 1960. And they went out and measured it to try and come up with a price of pulverizing it and putting, I think, like a 2-inch thick binder course on the entire roadway. And then we would contribute the $10,000 that we have put towards them doing that. So they were pretty happy with that. Of course, that was 2 or 3 days ago. So the road out there, it used to be, the town of Scituate, the Historical Society, used to own that small park, is my understanding, and it was given to the state as a state park, along with the roadway. So what I heard after the selectmen's meeting last night, I got a phone call this morning from Steve Gammon, and there is a woman that runs Mass Conservation and Recreation Services, I guess, Priscilla Gigas, and they are now questioning whether the road is in fact a state-owned road or a private road. And we did title research when we went up and bought our properties. We determined it was a state road. People at the state had determined it was a state road, but she evidently has dug up a 1977 opinion from some attorney somewhere in her department that that might lead you to believe that it's a private road up there. So Steve Gammon's, when I talked to him today about it, he said, we all know that's not the case. But what we're doing is we're trying to get whatever support we can from the selectmen, and I believe they're going to support just sending a letter to the state saying that the town has certainly no objection to the state going in and fixing up that roadway. And from a conservation standpoint, I just figured I'd come in because it is a park. There are some walking trails up there. You can get down to the marsh along Judge Cushing Road. And at the top of this cul-de-sac, there's an area that was an old parking lot, which they're looking at trying to redo that as part of this roadway. So I just figured, in order to help it along, if the commission could draft a letter, and I can come in and maybe help Pat and or Carol try and get it worded properly to the right people, that the commission would support that and just take a vote to support the state upgrading the pavement on that roadway.
I vote to support.
Sure. I think we need a motion.
Oh, I make a motion that the commission sends a letter to the state saying we would love to have the road, Cushing Park Road, paved by them. At their expense.
That it's a state, that it's a state road.
That was
They wouldn't be paving it.
That was that was carefully crafted by Carol and Steve.
Yeah. Oh,
Second.
they're in
All in
cahoots.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, can I make a motion to?
Two quick updates. Real, 1 minute, 1 minute. Two
Okay.
good news ones.
Oh, you got?
Walter Hewitson is gonna take on the 31 Candlewood project and work with our friend.
Have fun.
And he'll be great.
That's
This
fine.
will work. And then 57, 58 Crescent, that was a change in engineers.
Oh, okay.
They're working with the engineer, then they're gonna take that person back to talk to Barbara, and they're gonna try to come up with some plan that solves that.
Great.
So,
Sounds good. Thank you.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Kevin will be back next meeting.
That's what he said. We'll say.
We saw him today, though.
Yeah, I was with you, remember? With me.
Jeez.
The meeting